Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell. I'm recording this on April 12th, 2026. Last night, J.D. Vance failed in the ceasefire negotiations with Iran. He was with Kushner and Witkoff. And now, fast forward to this morning, Trump stated that he was going to blockade the Strait. As of this recording, 2 Navy vessels have traversed the Strait, 2 U.S. Navy vessels, and the Navy is using sweepers, minesweepers. The question is, what will the energy markets do? Now, I did a market analysis that just was published today. So take a look at that. I go over what I think is going to happen with the equity market, the treasury market, the oil market, and the natural gas market. And how volatility may change. All right? But there's a lot of what ifs. You know, what's going to happen? What's the reaction by Iran? How much force, kinetic force, will we use? Will oil go up or down? I suspect because of the blockade that Iran is going to hit some of the GCC infrastructure. Because of that, oil is going to go up and may test the 104 resistance level. It's trading, the close on Friday was in the 95 handle. So we could see a price appreciation of about 95 and price appreciation from 95 up to 104. So we could see almost like a $9 increase. The question is how fast can that strait be unclogged? And how much can be mitigated in terms of infrastructure damage? Damage that we cause onto the Iranians and damage the Iranians cause on the GCC. So with that, we're going to take a look at some of the videos. I'll give you my opinion on it, where there's some of these are economists, some of these are market analysts, some are retired generals. We'll look at the mosaic, get an idea of what's going to happen for trading on Monday. All right, so please help support the work that I do. All these videos are for free, so please subscribe to the channel. You can subscribe to YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. All the links are in the description. You can also follow me on X, GETTR, TikTok, Substack, Patreon. If you want to support the free content that I create, purchase the products that I have on my store, and or you can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee on my website. It's very easy to help support the work that I do. I give you a perspective of how to improve your health, but also not to be a victim of the news that is happening in our lives every day. You're going to have a lot of people complaining, but you're also going to see people that can actually navigate through this and mitigate your risks and maybe even benefit from the news. If you pay attention to me, you'll fare better. You don't think it's all doom and gloom and you can't mitigate the problems, you're wrong. All right, so just pay attention to me and everything's going to be fine. So with that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great products that I offer that help to improve your health. Now, this is something that I've been doing for a very long time, taking higher doses of antioxidants, bringing down inflammation, going all the way back to when I was 16 years old. Why? Because heart disease runs rampant in my family. My brother died from heart disease at 36 years old. All right, so if you mitigate the problem early, if you take charge of your health, you can slow down the aging process and help your different organ systems so you don't have problems when you're older, such as improving your cardiovascular health, your brain function, your pancreatic function, your metabolism, your immune system, your endocrine system, helping with your kidney function, your gut function, skin health. All these can be improved if you follow my advice. So with that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the magnesium and zinc. This will help to improve your brain function and help with your immune system. You should be taking this every day. Most people are not taking enough magnesium. Vitamin C magnesium helps with the skin, brain function, and immune system. You can stack these together. And vitamin C is super important, especially if you take it with the collagen to cross-link to improve your dermal layer by drinking filtered water. You need the filtered water to help with the cross-linking of vitamin C to collagen. And your dermal layer will improve. Now I have topical products to help with the topical part of your skin, like the structural nanosilver gel. That structural nanosilver gel is dual purpose. You can use it as daily skincare. It'll help to heal a wound. And if you are not feeling well because of the cold, or someone around you is not feeling well and you want to protect yourself, put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your eyes, around your ears, around your nose. Lightly coat your nostrils. It stays active for 5.5 hours to neutralize. You can't do that with Pharrell. So it's dual purpose. But using this as a topical for daily skincare and taking the vitamin C with the collagen, with drinking the filtered water, you're improving your topical layer and your dermal layer. Now to improve your basal layer, take the C60 and the resveratrol. And I'll talk about C60 later, but by stacking the C60, either an avocado extra virgin olive oil or MCT coconut oil, and stacking it with the resveratrol, you're helping the dermal, you're helping the basal layer of your skin. So you're targeting all three major layers. The basal, that's creating new skin cells, the dermal layer with the vitamin C and the collagen, and the topical with the structural nanosilver gel. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take my advice and improve your skin. Okay, with that, you can also take a look at my anti-aging boxes. I have a advanced and a beginner's skincare box where you can purchase these products separately. It's up to you. Make sure you use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. All right, but you apply a holistic approach and you stack the supplements accordingly, you'll get the max benefit. Why does this work? Because your biochemistry is complex. It has lots of feedback loops. So there's no such thing as just take magnesium and zinc and you'll be fine. No, you have to take it with other stuff to have the synergistic effects to get the anti-aging capability. All right? And this is the reason why most physicians fail when it comes to supplementation, proper supplementation. It's about the stacking because of our complex biochemistry. It's that simple. All right? I've been doing this for a very long time. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Now we're going to go to the videos now. This one is Bloomberg talking about the blockade.
John, about what this blockade will entail. The president in one of the True Social tweets says other countries are involved. Do we know which ones? And more broadly, logistically, from a military standpoint, how do you execute something like this?
Yeah, the President Trump has said for quite a while that, well, I will say he's flip-flopped on this point, but he's wanted to build an international coalition to open the Strait of Hormuz. A lot of European countries who could have brought some capabilities to bear were not willing to do that when there was a risk of coming under Iranian fire. That includes the French, the British. So as far as I understand, their positions have not changed. Some of the Gulf states, the UAE, for example, have suggested they would be willing to play some role in this, but they don't have the same level of naval assets to bring to bear in this coalition. So perhaps some support roles from some of those states as well as Israel. But yeah, President Trump has changed his position from we don't need to open the Strait to we'll have allies work with us to open the Strait to the allies won't do it, forget it, we'll leave and they'll take care of it.
You know, what's interesting about this whole issue with Iran, Axios has a tendency to be breaking with the news.
That the U.S. is going to play, first and foremost, a role in imposing a blockade and in figuring out what gets in and what gets out of the Strait.
Jeff, so let's take a step back here and try to parse through what exactly this means for the U.S.'s role in the region right now. Is this an escalation in a time where there's supposed to be a ceasefire to negotiate?
Yeah, I mean, it's an escalation of sorts. Yes, it's not an escalation of military might yet, although as I
said, the threats of it are there.
Exactly. The threats are still there, and that's how he concluded his most recent Truth Social post, and that's also how he went into the negotiations by saying if they didn't lead to a deal, then the shooting would start again. I think it's actually quite interesting that that's not what he led with here. Instead, he led with this blockade, creating more questions about how that's going to work, which countries are going to be involved. The spot-on question that Christina asked, which is how does the military even execute this? And then leaving the clear conclusion that the U.S. is not moving out of the region, but going to stay. So that's a long way of saying it's an escalation of sorts. And I tell you what, I think it'll be very interesting to see how markets react to this tomorrow, because the fact of any blockade, be it by the United States or other countries preventing ships from going through the Strait, that has been the biggest economic ramification of this war, has been the closing of that strait and the impact on oil prices, which President Trump desperately wants to bring down so that the gasoline prices are, in the United States anyway, are at a more palatable place come November.
Alicia, I want to bring you in because there is, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's a war powers resolution vote coming up on the Hill next week. Question we ask all lawmakers from all sides of the aisle every time we have on is, realistically, is there anything Congress can do to stop not only this president, but really any president that wants to take a military action like this? And can they even get on the same page to try?
It's a great question. And as we know, the president has no issue going around congressional authority. The war powers vote specifically will be largely symbolic. Even if it passes through the House and the Senate, the president has the power to veto it. However, Congress still holds the power of the purse. There's still a roughly $200 billion supplemental funding request for defense spending sort of looming in the background here. And so there are only so many creative budgetary moves that the White House can do before they will have to turn to Congress and say, we do need extra spending to put some might behind this conflict in the Middle East. And so it will be a stretch to see, can he get a sufficient number of members behind what is potentially an unpopular war.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because this is exactly the needle that these members of Congress have to thread, especially those members who are up for re-election. Come November, how do they do this, or what are they doing in a way that shows that they support the president, or possibly if they start to push away from the president's position because this is unpopular, to try to win re-election, Alicia?
Exactly. I've talked to, election analysts and experts who say that it's possible we get to a point relatively soon where Republicans start to question, do I side with how my constituents are feeling, or do I continue to side with the president? What's going to be more beneficial for me? What is going to position me best to get up for re-election, especially with the midterms looming this November? So it is possible we start to see more of that fraying in what is already a very slim majority and kind of a disorganized Republican Party, especially in the House.
David, I want to go back to you and ask, first of all, if you've heard, just even in the last intervening minutes, anything from CENTCOM or the Pentagon, any details? I'm assuming the answer is no, but if I'm wrong, please correct me. I also want to, I mean, there's a ton of military equipment from the US in the Middle East. Obviously, we tracked it for weeks as it was all heading over there. Do they have logistically the equipment they would need to execute something like this? And is the Pentagon as a military getting a bit overstretched because we have Venezuela, we have this, and now Trump is already talking about potential action in Cuba? At some point, does the rubber meet the road? And even a very loyal DOD is going to say, we have to pick some priorities because we can't be everywhere at once.
Sure. Yeah. The aircraft carrier, one of the two that's in the region, is setting records for the amount of time that crew has been on that ship. They were involved in the Venezuela operation. Now they're over in the Gulf. There's been some good reporting about just how stretched they are. That particular crew, you sort of extend that out to the full range of the forces that the U.S. is bringing to bear. Certainly, you could see the U.S. The troops themselves and the equipment being stretched. Some stuff needs repairs, needs to be rotated out, etc. Now, whether there's enough in the region to pull this off now, it depends exactly how they're going to execute this mission. There's been some doubt cast on the idea that the U.S. or even its allies have enough to be able to escort individual tankers in and out of the Strait. Now, that's not what Trump is saying here. He's talking about a blockade.
Right.
I'm trying to visualize even where you would position assets in order to impose a total blockade. Very, very difficult. It is a narrow stretch of water, but not narrow enough unless the U.S. is willing to open fire on vessels that come through, which maybe we are, that you could interdict everything that's coming in and out of the Strait. But obviously, there has been some thought put into that on the Pentagon side. This has been one of the options that's been presented to Trump over the past several weeks. It's going to be a question of how they execute it and whether they then think, okay, we need to bring even more force to bear in the region, which will suggest to people sitting back in the U.S., to lawmakers, et cetera, that this is going to be a longer, costlier, potentially bloodier campaign, depending on what tactics exactly the military is using at a time when they were just sort of preparing the American people for this to be over, right? It was just a few days ago that Pete Hegseth said all of the military objectives had been achieved. President Trump himself was sort of talking in a tone that suggested he thought it was time to get out. And now, after just one day of talks, we could be back into a point where we're looking at an expanding U.S. operation in the Gulf. Now, I don't want to speak too soon. Those announcements were just made minutes before we all came on.
Literally minutes ago. We'll give you some leeway there, Dave. Yeah.
Still making sense of it. But yeah, I mean, the signal could be that the U.S. is stepping up the operation in and around the Gulf rather than, 1 or 2 more weeks, as President Trump had said previously.
Jeff, I'm wondering if you know, and
have you ever wanted to install a battery backup system on your house but thought, they all look so complicated? Or
Jeff, I'm wondering if you know, and we may not know at this point, who we think got in the president's ear about this, because we talked previously, it seemed to me at least that the president was kind of saying, well, the Strait could be open, the Strait could not be open. He'd almost lost interest in it. And now we get this about face, this very forceful tweet language and action from the White House. Do we think this is Vance coming back and giving him a call? Do we think this is someone else in his orbit pushing this? Who does this sound like to you as someone who covers this administration intimately?
Well, honestly, Christina, I think it's just reality getting into his ear. I mean, the fact that the Strait was an open question mark was a huge vulnerability for this president, for the United States, for the rest of the world. And it's a vulnerability that largely wasn't there before this war began. So even though he has used sort of positive language to say, oh, it'll just open up on its own, that was never realistic. And I think it also raises questions now. Again, there's so many questions that are being raised about what's realistic about this blockade. There weren't that many ships going through in the first place. Certainly the point of the blockade appears to be that he wants to prevent any ships going through that Iran had blessed. So that's going to impact Iran and put pressure on them economically, and also increase pressure on other countries that were supporting Iran. But I don't know the answer to who got into his ear. I think certainly it's he said that Vice President Vance and his other 2 envoys had briefed him. So I think they would be the last people who he must have been on the phone with. But in general, he had to address the Strait in some way.
Yeah.
And this is how he's decided to address it.
The person who called was reality, as Jeff puts it so eloquently.
Hey, Alicia, we got to make a little bit of a pivot here because you cover Congress, and we do have a member of Congress who's in the news right now, and that would be Eric Swalwell, who is facing pressure to step down from the governor's race in California, questions about his own future, an investigation opened here in New York about sexual assault allegations. Can you just bring us up to speed on what could happen to him and three other members of Congress that, now we're talking about could actually be expelled for various reasons?
Of course, it's definitely not, a great time in the California governor's race. Hakeem Jeffries already put out a statement, condemning the actions and the allegations, asking Swalwell to step down from the governor's race. To me, it seems like only a matter of time to not have the party leader on your side. It just seems like a grim chance of continuing in that race. And that really shakes things up. It's going to be interesting to see how California plays out. And of course, there's allegations amongst other members in both parties. And so, as the midterms continue to play out, it'll be interesting to see how this all goes.
Okay. All right, now what I want to do is go to, this is John Bolton speaking.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation.
Ambassador Bolton, last time you were on the show, you were talking about how you had advocated for this at your time at NSC. You wish they would have done it then. You were glad they did it now. But in that intervening time, you voiced some concerns, both in writing and on some of the other networks, about how this is proceeding. I'm wondering, we wanted to get your take on these seemingly failed talks in Pakistan, but now I want to ask you what your thoughts on this blockade that's being announced by President Trump just minutes ago.
Right. Well, I come from the perspective that the only way to get true peace and security in the Middle East is to have regime change in Iran. You can negotiate all you want with these people. It's not going to change anything. And I think the failure of the Islamabad negotiations just makes the point as clearly as one can. I think the ceasefire was a mistake, but just dealing with where we are right now, part of the problem here was caused by Donald Trump a few weeks ago lifting American sanctions on the shipment of Iranian oil. And I think he was motivated by fear of rising international oil prices, and he thought a few tankers might get the price down. I don't think that's correct. I think it was insignificant. But what he was doing was allowing Iran to ship oil, not the Gulf Arabs, but Iran, presumably to get paid to gain resources to use in their military to kill Americans, financing the war against us. That never made any sense, and he should reimpose the sanctions. I think that maybe, I haven't seen these tweets, but I think that may be what he's doing. And a blockade makes sense. You don't have to attack Karg Island. I don't think that was ever realistic. The point is, if no Gulf Arab oil gets out, no Iranian oil gets out. Let's see how they feel about that in Tehran.
We're going to get back to the blockade in a second, but you mentioned regime change. So I've got to ask you, this administration, the U.S. administration, seems to think that what has happened in Iran over the last 6 weeks constitutes as regime change. Do you agree?
That's ridiculous. Look, what we're dealing with is a group of religious fanatics pursuing a radical ideology, and it permeates the core of Ayatollahs at the top and certainly permeates the Revolutionary Guard. Now, the leadership of both the civilian side of the government and the Revolutionary Guard has been severely harmed by the last 6 weeks. Not enough, obviously, but it's beginning to fracture the regime at the top. There are signs of that inside Iran. And I think the devastation that's been unleashed against the instruments of Iranian state power, the Revolutionary Guard, the Quds Force, the besieged militia, are having a real effect inside Iran. I think the ceasefire was a mistake. The last thing you want to do is let up before you really do crack the regime and it collapses internally. That gives internal opponents and people who defect from the regime a chance to take over. Not guaranteed, but a chance.
Well, I think the challenge with that, Ambassador, some would point out, is there's not a clear group of those people. There's not clear opposition. There's not clear defectors. Who are the names? Who would be an acceptable leader of this country to you?
And are those moderates left? Because we've seen reports that many of them were potentially killed during some of these strikes. Yeah.
There were no moderates in the regime. If you judge by the most important criteria, who favors getting Iranian nuclear weapons, they all favor it. The opposition is really quite widespread across the country. It is disorganized, that's a fact, but it's not like Iran had a two-party system. We're saying, well, we want this party out and the other party in. I do think there will be a lot of turmoil. I think that's what happens after a 47-year-long dictatorship begins to collapse. And I don't think you can dictate who the leaders are going to be from the outside. But what we can say is if this regime begins to come apart, there are plenty of people inside who, seeing the ship going down, will decide they don't want to go down with it.
But Mr. Messer, what is the end goal here? Because, we have your op-ed from earlier this week where you say the U.S. cannot leave without finishing the job. And we've been talking this morning, that was a fear of a lot of allies that the Trump administration, America, would leave with the Strait not fully reopened. It looks like they are taking action on that front. But even if they do, this regime has proven, I think, more durable than a lot of people in this current administration thought. I'm wondering if you thought they would outlast this long. And if they do start to crumble, to your point, there are no moderates in the country. What replaces them?
The people are the moderates. The regime itself is not a happy house for moderates.
This is the problem. This is the problem with mainstream media and most of the people out there that are analyzing this. They're not giving enough credit to the secular movement within Iran that's educated. They want self-determination. They want self-rule. They don't want the tyranny of a theocracy. The problem is that 40%, maybe half of the population, is aligned with the IRGC and the theocratic regime. So literally, for them to have a constitutional republic, which is what is needed, and the seculars to end up ruling the country, there needs to be a civil war because there's too many individuals aligned with the theocracy. But I think that with some help from the Western culture, Western countries, that the seculars within Iran will be able to be victorious. But, the mainstream media, especially the ones that are in the business channel, they want expedience. And that would mean, well, maybe a theocratic regime, maybe some sort of military dictatorship, maybe even a monarchy. Let's bring back the Shah. Let's bring back, some sort of king rule. It's only going to make things worse. Democracy, a constitutional republic, is a better solution for Iran. But Western nations are going to have to help with the IMF, the World Bank, help with constituting a branches of government that have equal power. But you're going to have a theocratic side of the population that is aligned with the Ayatollah fighting against the actual seculars. And Iran's going to go into a civil war here.
And the Ayatollahs have to be replaced. I don't think anybody can say with confidence that the regime has survived. They've been building it for 47 years. We've attacked it for 6 weeks. A little patience is required here. The Gulf Arabs will tell you, I think, that they don't look forward to living as vassals to the Ayatollahs in Tehran. They want the Strait open. And I think now is the time to do it militarily, because if we cannot show today that we can open the Strait, what happens 3 years from now when the Ayatollahs decide to close it again? If you want to live under that kind of regime, that is a guarantee of higher oil prices for a long time.
Exactly, and what that's doing is abrogating to the Ayatollah, to the IRGC, freedom of navigation, which is maritime law. What? And what happens when the Chinese wants to do it for the 9-dash line? What do we do then? We need to push back on this big time. And so when Trump said, well, we can, charge tolls and they can charge tolls and blah, 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 that was so stupid for him to say, because he wasn't paying attention to, we fought a war to have freedom of navigation. No, why would you give that up, dumbass?
Gulf Arabs being subordinate.
I also want to ask you, I watched the Trump administration pull out of the JCPOA the first time. The situation going into...
That's the sound of an American oil company hard at work. Want to be a part of it? Listen up.
Hello, my name is Adam Ferrari, and I'm the CEO of Phoenix Energy. I look forward to you joining us at our next webinar where you can drill deeper into our bond offering. We currently offer 2 investment opportunities: a private placement bond offering for accredited investors with target annual interest rates between...
The situation going into negotiations in Pakistan overnight, the elements on the ground were not that different than the agreement that the U.S. pulled out of. Do you think that was a smart decision to even go to those negotiations? Do you think it gave Iran a card it wouldn't have had if J.D. Vance hadn't touched down in Islamabad?
Well, I don't think the negotiations gave them a card. I think the ceasefire gave them a card. They've been subjected to 6 weeks of constant bombardment. Now they've had at least some time to be able to regroup, to see if they can reconnect, establish communications. I think you need to put the pressure back on. The immediate point is to open the Strait. If we open the Strait to Gulf Arab oil, but not to Iranian oil, that would be the ideal interim.
On opening the Strait and back to this idea of the blockade, which you have pushed for, in your New York Times op-ed, you write, if American combat forces entering the region can help open the Strait by controlling territory on Iran's side, acknowledging the inevitable risks, that would be more sensible strategically. Does this mean U.S. forces actually on the ground in Iran?
Yes, I say more strategic than taking Karg Island. Look, while we've watched for the past 10 or 15 years, Iran has been fortifying a number of islands in the Gulf. That's how they've set up this tolling system. Now, at least 3 of those islands are actually claimed by the United Arab Emirates: Abu Musa, Greater Tunba, and Lesser Tunba. They're filled with tunnels. They probably have missiles and other equipment. I think those are the kinds of targets that we need to neutralize so that we can make the Strait safe for maritime transit. The military will have much more detailed knowledge of this, and I'm sure that's what they're thinking about now. It's not just clearing the mines from the Strait, although that's obviously important, but protecting convoys of tankers from anti-ship missiles, swarms of Iranian fast boats, of which we've sunk a great number, and Iranian drones dropping weapons from the sky.
You said we need to be patient with regime change, with change in Iran. But I'm wondering what that means. How long do you think this could take? How long do you think America should stay in this, considering this is a president who campaigned on no more forever wars? And do you think the president and the American public have the attention span for how long this could potentially take in order to see real durable change?
Well, it's certainly the case. The president promised no more wars. That's his problem. I mean, he apparently doesn't think too much of the pledge, because that's what he's doing now. And it is important to get the American public to understand why we're doing this, which is another problem of President Trump. He did not make what I think is a very compelling case for regime change before the war. He didn't try to persuade the American people. He didn't work with Congress. He didn't brief our allies. He didn't work with the Iranian opposition. It's still not too late, but a lot of the problems could have been alleviated. And you ask how long. I don't think you can put a time frame on it. I just want to introduce one radical concept: victory. That we actually defeat the regime remove the threat of Iran's nuclear weapons program, remove the threat of international terrorism, remove the threat that's really almost as grave as those two, and that's Iranian control over the Strait of Hormuz.
Ambassador, I understand that, but also you live in the real world. You've lived in Washington. We've got midterms coming up. We've been talking all morning about what this is doing for prices for the American public and how voters vote on kitchen table issues, and that's affordability. The longer this persists, the more we're going to see uncertainty in markets. Even if the Strait is open, it's not going to be open at the tempo that it was before, certainly not for some time. Aren't those two going to hit the road potentially before this job is accomplished? And do you think this administration, given what's coming in November, will wait it out? Or do you think they will cut and run before the job is done?
Well, consider the cost of not succeeding. That has cost too. I think the president could make a very effective case that if you could get Gulf Arab oil coming out of the region again, given that before this started, the world was awash with petroleum. People were talking about the surplus and what to do about it. I think prices would come down very quickly, especially when it looks like it is safe to bring maritime traffic through the Gulf. Simply the fact that the Gulf is open will cause prices to drop dramatically. So I think look, we should have done this 6 weeks ago. He should have seen this at the beginning. He said, I was surprised that they tried to close the Strait. I was surprised they attacked the Gulf Arab states. I can't imagine the Pentagon didn't warn him of these dangers beforehand. Maybe he just didn't pay attention.
The president, in that Truth Social post at the top of the hour, just before the hour, said that nuclear was not among the points agreed to. We know that's certainly a sticking point for both parties when it comes to these discussions. It has been for years at this point. Ambassador, you're all too familiar with that. Is there a way for the U.S. to get this country to dismantle its nuclear enrichment program without changing the regime at the top?
No, I think that's the clear point. If you cannot change a regime's behavior, and you don't want to live under an unacceptable threat like disappearing in a mushroom cloud, then the answer is change the regime. George W. Bush put it very, very well when he was president. He said, we cannot allow the world's most dangerous weapons to fall into the hands of the world's most dangerous people. And a lot of those most dangerous people are running the regime in Tehran.
He's absolutely right. And I'm going to big
Apollo's AI assistant, the first GTM AI that actually works. From simple asks to complete workflows, turn every prompt into pipeline.
Bolton's right about this, and I'm not a big fan of Bolton. All right. The reality of the situation is that we have to, as a country, to make sure that we have freedom of navigation for military reasons and for economic reasons, and that we prevent Iran from reaching a nuclear weapon. Now, you have America First individuals saying, well, there was an imminent threat and blah, blah, blah. But the reality of the situation was there's zero reason for 60% enrichment of uranium. Zero reason other than for weapon use. This is an existential threat for anyone in the world. So you don't have to wait until it's imminent for it to be an existential threat. In addition, just from a morality standpoint, there is good and virtue in what we are doing by overthrowing the theocratic regime. Look at how they were decimating the protesters. Are we supposed to just apply postmodernism, saying anything goes? It's all relative. If that's what the Iranian dictator wants to do, yeah, so what? That's postmodernism. There's no virtue in that. Where's the virtue? The virtue is doing something that may be hard, that will benefit you, but it will also benefit others. There's virtue in that. So don't fall into the slave morality that Nietzsche was talking about, where the Christian faith, America First, Christian, nationalism, that's kind of a big problem because it's insular, it's myopic, it's self-centered, and elements of it become, to the extreme, suicidal empathy. This is part of the problem in the world. Postmodernism. And that postmodernism is affecting the ultra-right, and that postmodernism is affecting the ultra-left. And that's where a lot of people are having problems understanding this. It's like, how is AOC similar to Tucker? Well, they're very similar. They're extremes of a wingnut. And we need to get back to center. A little bit left of center, a little bit right of center. But most of the country is in this center category. Most of the country is not Tucker. And most of the country is not AOC. And even if you add them together, that's not most of the country. But the problem is that because they're the loudest, they get the most notoriety and clicks. So you assume that the society is, half of it is very left and half of it's very right. That's not the case. Most people are around the middle. A little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, but most people are in the middle. So with that, we need to start realizing, you know what? Maybe this idea of America first, nationalism, America first pacifism is not in the lane of virtue. Now, obviously, the ultra-left thinks that it's okay to have a theocratic regime, and suppress its people. Where was the protesting with the theocratic regime killing the seculars in Iran? The ultra-left was doing no king protests against Trump, while the Ayatollah was killing seculars in Iran. Where was the outcry? Suicidal empathy. This is an element of this slave morality that Nietzsche was talking about. Right and left have similarities that are dangerous, that erode our constitutional freedoms, that erode the pillars of society: God, country, and family. Someone would say, how can Tucker be, because he's a Christian nationalist, how is he eroding the pillars that you're explaining, Dr. Paul Cottrell? How is it that Tucker's doing that? Tucker is eroding the pillar of country by demonizing what Trump's doing, by saying we shouldn't be going into Iran. Well, in effect, he's saying that the Iranian Ayatollah, the IRGC, should remain in power. Because that's the end result if you don't go in and do something. Unfortunately, the seculars aren't rising up and fighting against the regime with more vigor. So he's weakening the country because eventually Iran will have a nuclear bomb. And then what do, Tucker? You wait until it's imminent? That's not a good policy. That doesn't sound like what Caesar would do. That doesn't sound like what Machiavelli would do. Maybe we should stop being pacifists with this slave morality that Nietzsche was talking about. Now, there's problems with Nietzsche's philosophy. It led to Nazism. But the thing is that there is something wrong with extreme Christianity. People would say, why was there such a pull away from religion? Why did people move away and become atheist or agnostic or just non-observant? Because of the over-proselytizing. Through this you kind of almost sense it with the Charlie Kirk crowd. Most of America's in the middle. Not ultra-right, not ultra-left. Okay, now what about God? Tucker is a proponent of Christianity. Okay, glad that he found religion. Maybe he'll be a better person. But it seems like he's playing to a base that watches podcast. So it seems like he's trying to monetize some sort of Christianity. Now, how is that any different than Jerry Falwell? I can't tell the difference between Tucker and a preacher on the all-time gospel hour on cable. I can't tell the difference. So, with the pillar of God, the question is where is his true heart with this? Is it about monetizing? Is it pushing some sort of extreme proselytization? Now, he's definitely anti-Israel. He's anti-Zionist. Okay, I mean, there are many people that are anti-Zionist. There are many Jews that are anti-Zionist. But the thing is that this rhetoric that he has seems to be antithetical to actually what the Old Testament has been saying, that there needs to be a temple and there needs to be sacrifices and certain rituals throughout the year and all this stuff. So he's breaking apart that foundation of the Abrahamic religions. You have to remember, the longest Abrahamic religion there is Judaism, not Christianity, not Islam. Right? It all is based on Judaism. All of it. Okay, so there's that God pillar. What about the family pillar? No, he's for family. Okay. He has kids and he thinks that, that people should have a traditional family and work, But the thing is that there is an element where he's eroding that pillar. How can you have family if you're not willing to protect the family and the wider society from an existential threat? Do you think Caesar would let an enemy harm his family? Do you think that he would let that happen? No, I don't think so. So, yes, Tucker does have an affinity to some of these pillars that I'm talking about, God, country, and family. But he's also eroding some of those pillars because of his extremism. And that's the point I'm making. Now, I think that he erodes the pillars less than the ultra-left. Because with the ultra-left, they want to kill babies. They don't want family creation. They don't have respect for the American flag or the country. They want to destroy the Constitution. And a lot of them are atheists or agnostic. So it's not 100% in terms of eroding those pillars by the ultra-left or the ultra-right. But Tucker is ultra-right. And he's dangerous. And the thing is that a lot of this is about marketing, about him trying to get more eyeballs so he's accreting more funds. And where's his heart? Why did he brand himself as Duck Dynasty? You want to notice this? This is like, how can Tucker Carlson, bow tie guy, blue blood, East Coast blue blood, didn't finish college, but somehow applies to the CIA and his father's connected to the intelligence agencies, And then all of a sudden gets on CNN and he's a pundit for the Republican Party or the conservatives. Then fast forward to now, he is still a pundit for the Republicans and conservative values, but there is a little bit of a Duck Dynasty thing about him that just doesn't seem right. It's marketing. Someone talked to him about how to market himself after he left Fox. And all the podcasters are loving it. Or all the podcasters are loving it because they're all fighting each other because of the podcast wars. But also, you have individuals watching the podcast and they're believing this stuff. Because America First pacifism is easy to get sucked into. It's like a black hole; it just sucks you in. But saying America First expansionism, well, wait a minute here. That sounds like more about what our founding fathers were about. All right, with that, I want to play Victor Hansen's take about the podcast wars. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the clarity factor. This will help to get rid of your brain fog and allow you to concentrate. It's going to help to improve your memory and your cognition. Take it every day, drink it with filtered water. It's a very powerful neurostat that you should be taking every day to improve your neural function. A lot of people aren't paying attention to their brain health. You need to pay attention to your brain health. Resveratrol, like I said, it will help with the skin, the basal layer, the health of the basal layer, but it'll also help with youthful gene expression in your cells. Soak up free radicals, help the health of the mitochondria. You'll have more energy, and you're going to be getting rid of cells that are in senescence. And so your tissues will be rejuvenated. So please go to my store and get the resveratrol. It stacks really well with C60. And myotrol. Myotrol is super important to build muscle and to maintain muscle. When we get older, we start to methylate genes and we can't build muscle as easily as when we were younger. By taking myotrol, it will help you to build the muscle because it has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans that will help with the gene expression to build the muscle. Do resistance training. You don't have to do a lot, but just do a little bit of resistance training. Take the myotrol, and you're going to build muscle and maintain muscle, help with your mitochondrial health, and you'll have more energy to maintain that muscle. If you are an athlete, younger or older, you will also benefit from myotrol to build more muscle for your sport. So your strength will increase. This is really important. And when you build muscle, you're also helping your brain. Why? 2 reasons. By building muscle and you're doing the resistance training, you're actually helping with blood flow. All right? And when you get better blood flow to your brain, you get more nutrients. In addition, when you're building muscle, you're increasing your concentration of myokines, and they are neuroprotective. And you're going to have higher concentrations of B, D, and F, which is super important for neural protection. Please go to my store and get the myotrol and do the resistance training. The-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. All right, let's listen to Victor Hansen and his take on Meghan and Tucker.
But hate Israel, hate Jews, and the people hate Jews, hate Israel. They become synonymous. Candace Owen, Steve Bannon, Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, they feel they're very important, and now the less Trump talks to them, and the more access that's denied to them. They have no connection now. He's cut them all off, and they want to react.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Western Spirit here from Israel. And today with us, we have one of my all-time favorite people, Victor Davis Hansen, Senior Fellow at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University. And Victor, it's an extreme honor to have you. And also, I'm very happy that you're feeling better. We all prayed for you in the Holy Land here as well. So it's an honor, and I'm very happy to see you.
Thank you.
We don't have a lot of time. Let's get into it. In Israel, we are a day or two after the ceasefire, and the Israeli public, in the new polls that have come out, is very disappointed in the results of the war. How do you look at where we are? Was it a win overall for Israel and the U.S.? How do you look at what just happened?
Yeah, I think that what you just described
Yes.
mirrors the United States with one big difference. The left and some of the independents on Monday were called, because of Trump's tweet, which about the existential civilizational ruin. But of course, I think he meant civilizational in the term, in the sense of the theocracy, not all of Iran, because he had said he was going to bring help to the Iranian people, and he had not hit targets, unlike past presidents.
I think he meant the destruction of the theocratic regime and a big dent into the Shia religion. Secondly, it was going to be knocking out their energy structure. And by knocking out electricity, you're snapping back into the 1600s. Now, was it the Stone Age? No. I mean, the 1600s wasn't the Stone Age. But the thing is that it's not modern society. So a little bit of it was bluster. But the thing is that if you hit the energy grid of a country, no matter how advanced it is, if you don't have energy, if you don't have electricity, you are in pre-industrial revolution. The industrial revolution started with steam engines. No one has a steam engine. So you're pre-industrial revolution.
Libya or Serbia or the first Gulf War or almost all of our wars, we hit power plants and everything, especially World War II, Korea.
Right. Exactly.
But he didn't. So there was obviously he wasn't intending to do that. But the left went crazy, so they were saying that he was Hitlerian. And then 24 hours later, when they saw that he had, agreed to a ceasefire, and they felt embarrassed, then they said he was Neville Chamberlain, Taco they called. Trump always chickens out. So I'd say the same public opinion is here. They're baffled. They don't quite know what follows after all this. But I think it's better to be empirical very quickly. If you look what the Israeli and the United States Air Force did, they inflicted a level of damage that is almost inconceivable from what we can tell. The command and control, the Air Force, the Navy, the air defenses, the factories and assembly plants that facilitated that, the nuclear processing institution, et cetera, et cetera. So the next step logically would have been to hit dual use. And those are things, as you know, power plants, pretty much what they're trying to do to Israel and to the Gulf monarch. That's kind of another irony in the West, that we damn Israel and the United States for considering dual use, and yet we accept without criticism that that's the only modus operandi that Iran has. But I think we forget where we are now. Iran has got probably $500 billion of military damage and infrastructure over 47 years. So, and then it's going to have to make a decision whether it's going to give $10 billion a year to Hamas, the Houthis, Hezbollah, and up. Whereas at the same time, it's got a restive population, and nobody knows who's running the country. They're not familiar faces. Familiar faces that they'd all had to deal with are gone. So whatever Israel or the United States does, you've got this population that's restive. You've got a country that's bankrupt. And we know what that regime will have to do. It will try to immediately give discounts to Chinese oil and facilitate arms transfers, barter from China. And that's going to be money out of the pockets of the people when they're in dire straits, and they're going to know about it. Or they're going to subsidize Arab terrorists, which they don't like anyway. So they're going to be in a difficult situation. So then we have three tactical choices. And more or less, Israel's aims are similar to the United States with one big difference. We're distant and more powerful, and you are proximate and more vulnerable. So whatever degree of recovery they have will hit you before it hits us. I don't know if that'll be accurate for Europe, given the new information about what they might have in nuclear enrichment and the missile range recalibration. But that said, we can go away. We can just say, we did all of this damage, and we had, the United States lost 13, we probably lost $500 million dollars in equipment, and maybe where people are calibrating at 50, 70, 80 billion. It was expensive, but the amount of damage that we did will make them a pariah. And more importantly, we changed the calculus of the Middle East so that the Gulf monarchies are in this Orwellian situation where they were working with the Israelis. And in the future, they're going to do two things. They're going to increase their pipeline facility to the Red Sea, to the Gulf of Oman, and maybe even across, as you guys have talked about, the Haifa or something. And they're going to make that strait irrelevant in a large degree. And that's going to have enormous importance. And then the second thing, they're going, the myth that they used that they were crazy, unpredictable, and especially terrible, and you just didn't go into Iran because of the consequence, that's been shattered. They were a paper tiger, as Trump said. And that's different. And then the United States in particular is in a pretty good position because it has its assets there and it can come back anytime. So we can leave. And then if we want to come back, we can mow the lawn, as the Israelis say. The second is we can extend another deadline. We can say Lebanon wasn't on the table. Taking tolls of Hormuz is not on the table. You broke your word. You've got another 48 hours. And here's a list of targets that are going to go, and just take them out. It doesn't have to be everything. It just says we'll be satisfied when you have lost your power grid for a week or two and you're accepted. We can do that. Or we don't even have to talk to them. We can just say, you know what? Things are pretty dire. We're going to take out Card Island so that they don't have any oil revenue for the next 15 years. And then we're going to leave. I would see you wouldn't want to be in. So there's a lot of ranges that we can do. The one thing that I think the Israelis should understand and gets them frustrated is there are political ramifications in the United States that are governing this decision. And the main one is the November midterms. Usually the N party loses seats, but because of the narrow margins in the House, just a few seats will give control to the left. And this is not the left of Bill Clinton. It's not even the left of Barack Obama. It's a radical socialist, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, anti-US. I mean, a lot of them are rooting for Iran. If they get power, the Trump revolution, counter-revolution is kind of stalled. That has ramifications beyond the border. That means the border, they will try to give amnesty. They will.
The problem is that the far right is also anti-Israeli, anti-Jewish, and in many regards, anti-American against the country. I mean, now, is it as bad as the far left? No. But the thing is it is there. And then some, in terms of hating the country, the far left hates the country far more than the ultra-right. But this America First pacifism versus America First expansionism can weaken the country. And because of their rhetoric, we're going to lose the House to the ultra-left. The ultra-right is, in their podcast like Tucker, is handing over the House seats to the ultra-left. Well, thanks, Tucker. You're so smart. Oh, by the way, you didn't finish college. Oh, thanks, Tucker. You're so smart because you started your career in a bow tie.
Reverse the crime policies. They'll try to reinstate DEI. All the things that Trump has done, they're going to try to reverse, and they will impeach Donald Trump. They won't convict him, but that will eat up the whole point they're planning is to eat up the last 2 years. So he doesn't want to lose those. He thinks that if he can stop the war or get Iran off the map by June, then he's got all of July, August, September, October. He's got 4 months to talk about the economy. And he thinks with all of the new tax cuts, the deregulation, the enormous increase in oil production, energy, the price will drop. And he also thinks that the Gulf monarchies, even though they're kind of hinting that they would like to renege on their promises of 4 or 5 trillion in foreign investment because of the war damage and their pipeline plans, he thinks that they'll still invest, and a lot of countries are investing. So all of that put together will give us good economic news, and then they can do pretty well, or at least stay even in the midterm. But that is the one, if he was in the second term and this had started after the midterms, there's no doubt in my mind he would have not wanted to negotiate unless they acceded to all of his term. Then he's got the MAGA movement. That's kind of exaggerated, but there's been a big shift in the United States where Candace Owens, Steve Bannon, Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, and I'm not going to lump them all together because they have different views and intensities, but they were very strong Trump supporters. And they feel that they're very influential, even though the polls don't reflect that, because the MAGA base is 85% in favor of the war. Republicans in general are about 85 as well. But they feel they're very important, and now they're the less Trump talks to them, and the more access that's denied to the White. They have no connection now with Trump. He's cut them all off, and they want to react. So here in the United States, we're getting almost daily from those people.
Just like little children that don't get their way. But the thing is that these little children, Megan, who's very self-centered, by the way, Tucker, who thinks he's entitled, he's a little entitled brat, and Candace, which is, she's just a dipshit. They all have these large channels and they think they're important. And the sad thing is, it was the viewers that gave them this notoriety. It was the viewers that elevated them to this status. How many people did Tucker Carlson save? How many people did Megyn Kelly save? How many people did Candace Owens save? There's an awful lot of people out there that were on the battlefield, literally and metaphorically, that were saving people when people needed to be saved. And they weren't there. And they will be judged. Trust me.
Well, a large audience that Netanyahu runs everything, and we were hoodwinked. We got to get out. Trump's worthless. He lied to MAGA. This was a forever war, endless war.
Victor, I want to ask you about that link of MAGA. So one of the things that yesterday, for example, Megyn Kelly went on Piers Morgan's show and said exactly what you said. She said that Netanyahu lied to Trump, and Trump basically, I think that's what she's implying, he's a buffoon, that some guy from Israel can come and sell him some fantasy, and he falls for it, does this war, and goes totally bad, and that's objectively not true, but whatever. And so why do you think, is it really that they believe these kinds of stuff? Or is it what the base, a lot of their listeners want to hear? Because objectively, it just doesn't seem smart. If you really love President Trump and you believe he's good policy and that he's bucking the system that they don't like on all the issues you just mentioned, why on this specific issue do they think that he's so gullible that some guy from Israel can just come and sell him a load of goods and he just believes it in this one specific narrow thing?
Yes.
Well, their story is that Netanyahu is something on Trump. He has some sort of carrot, and that if Trump doesn't do what Netanyahu wants, then Netanyahu's going to expose him. That's the story of the conspiracy theorists. And they build a channel, and a lot of stupid people watch the crap. But how's that helping people? Literally, my channel, which is small, all right, but my channel is telling you how to improve your health because of the crisis we went through. There's going to be an awful lot of people that will have Swiss cheese brain because of the crisis we went through. If you pay attention to what I'm telling you to do, you will mitigate that problem. Also, the immune system, you'll boost that up. And you get an added benefit. You're getting healthier. And you're slowing down the aging process. I'm helping you. I'm also telling you how not to be a victim by looking at the financial markets and telling you where the support and resistance levels are for the broad-based economy and the energy sector. What is Megyn Kelly doing? Megyn Kelly is telling you Netanyahu's got some dirt on Trump and he's controlling him. And you love the conspiracy theories. You love the conspiracy theories. But yet when the obvious is in front of you, you don't pay attention to it. Everything that is happening is going to affect your health and your financial well-being. If you don't pay attention to what I am telling you, you will be worse off. So stop listening to Megyn. Stop listening to Tucker. Stop listening to stupid Owens. Candace Owens. All right? Stop listening to Alex Jones, who doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. And start listening to people that actually are trying to help you. But I'm sure that people will continue watching Alex Jones, and he will continue being boastful and, feed the other conspiracy theories of the world. Now, some things he is on target, but he thinks the world revolves around him now. It's gonzo journalism now with Alex. It's gonzo journalism with Candace Owens. People build podcasts about Candace Owens. I mean, what? What? If Candace Owens died tomorrow, your life would not change. Would not change. 100% would not change. What the Federal Reserve does, with raising rates or lowering rates, your life will change. It will affect the job market. What's going on with artificial intelligence is going to affect your life. What are you going to do? You're going to keep on listening to stupid Owens? Stupid Alex? Stupid Tucker? Are you actually going to realize that there are these other variables that are actually affecting your life more? See, by listening to them, you're only making their life better. They're not making your life better. You listen to me, your life will get better.
That is to look back at the American bombing in the summer of 2025. I was on her show, she was all for it. She said that Trump had she used the vernacular testicles to do this and no one else would do it. And she was very, very supportive of Israel. And if I go back, I was on her show right after October 7th, and she was very supportive of Israel and very critical of the Palestinians. And Tucker was not so much so, but he wasn't as critical of Israel and Trump as he is now. Candace Owens had already gone off the deep end. Steve Bannon. So what changed? And what changed was not the actual realities, but world opinion and the propaganda of all the rubble in Gaza and in Beirut, and none of the reasons of the causation for it, and the mood on the campuses of the United States, and the democratic radicalism with Mondami, and then we've got all of these socialist governors coming in.
Now think about that. Think about that for a second. Think of now, not all of the protesting on the campuses were Ivy League, but the ones that ground zero was Harvard. All right, that was ground zero of it. And Candace Owens aligned herself with the ones that live in Gaza. She aligned herself with Hamas, and she didn't even finish college. Now think about that. She's aligning with these students that are postmodern with their philosophy, left-wing leaning, socialistic or communist, and Candace Owens is aligning with them. And you watch her and you give her ad revenue and notoriety. Stop watching these people, and I guarantee you that their personality will change, because it's all about the money for them. It's not about helping people. You can tell the very few that are out there that they're really trying to help people. What if Candace Owens lost millions of her views? Would she change her tune? I bet she does. Try it. Try it. Test it. Test it. See what happens. People that have virtue, that are doing something because there is a just cause, will not deviate because of some sort of wanting to be liked. So is there real virtue in Candace Owens? Is there real virtue with Megyn Kelly or Tucker Carlson? I don't see it. I don't see it. It's self-centeredness.
And it became cool, or it became the status quo for the left and the center,
right,
to try to excuse the United States. Not that they didn't criticize Trump. They said he's a fool and he's stupid, but he was hoodwinked by this Jewish guy who's clever and diabolical. But it didn't really appeal to the other half of the nation, because, I mean, you're going to make an empirical argument. His family, and he has put far more concentration on the Gulf monarchies, American investments. And the Gulf monarchies were really, as you know well, they were saying before the war, don't go in, don't go in. And then privately, they were saying, go in and get rid of it, we're scared. And then when we did go in, they said, don't negotiate, you've got to get rid of them. And then they have about the 6 Arab countries in the Gulf. I'm not saying their pilots are up to Western standards, but they have 600 combat aircraft. Mm-hmm. They have double the number of Israel, all of those countries together. And yet they didn't send anybody. They didn't send in, at least in size. So here you have this strange situation where if Donald Trump is really gullible and foolish, the argument would be, the continuation of that argument is, these clever Arabs with all this oil money and people in his family are investing, and there's all these funds and these deals that are being made, and yet they don't want to help.
Interesting observation. And if you look at the demonization of Jews throughout the centuries, for 2,000 years or more, it's the same old playbook. When you don't like what's going on in the economy, when you don't like what's happening, blame the Jews. Blame the Jews. It's so tired old trope. But on the other hand, there's another trope that has been lasting for the last 80 years, and that is there is this what I call the Holocaust ends up hijacking religion. All right? And what I mean by that is that there are many people in the Jewish faith that don't observe because of the atrocities of the Holocaust, or they feel as though they're entitled because of the Holocaust. No, they're not. They're not entitled. First of all, there's only less than 200,000 people in the world that actually was in the Holocaust. Only 200,000. And they will radically diminish in the next few years, where there won't be any. All right. So there's less than 200,000 people in the world that have a direct link where they were in the Holocaust. All right. So all these people that are saying because of the Holocaust, blah, 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 they weren't even in the Holocaust. So they hijacked the religion. And the Rebbe stated that there were these people that wanted to leave us, a empty seat at the table for Passover for the people that died in the Holocaust. And what the Rebbe said was, that's great, but what about finding a Jew that's not observant and have them come over to your house and sit in that chair and observe the mitzvahs during Passover? See? They hijacked the religion with the Holocaust. All right? So the Jewish people, especially the liberals, are not lily white here. And some of the nefarious business dealings that Jews have done over the years have created a negative light on the Jewish people in general, which is wrong. Which is wrong. One, that's just stereotyping. Two, they should have known better, so they didn't create a negative light. And actually, there is a prohibition on doing something wrong that can cause a negative outlook on your society. So that even these people that are Jewish that are doing these wrongful acts are not even following Judaism. So the reality of the situation here is a big part of society has demonized people always. The blacks or the Jews or the Irish or whoever it is. But for centuries, this has been a big problem. On where economic downturn happens, people are worried, people get stressed out, and you have to find someone to blame. So is that what's happening with the ultra-right? With this America First pacifism? That they're trying to find a scapegoat? It's much more complicated. It's much more complicated. Because you have people doing things that are anti-Semitic that's causing problems. But there are also things that are happening in the Jewish culture or in Israel that's causing problems. Some of it's religious issue, like why didn't the scholars give the go-ahead on the ritual slaughtering of the paraduma, the red heifer? Why isn't that happened? I don't know. But it hasn't. And we haven't had this opportunity since 2,000 years. Seems kind of strange. So maybe there's a curse happening to the scholars. But there's also going to be a curse on the ultra-right wing, too, because of this America First pacifism, blame the Jew stuff that's going on. But then you got the ultra-left that's aligned with Hezbollah and Hamas. Crazy. It's like crazy town. And so when bad things happen, don't be surprised. Because I've been warning people, 9/11/2026 is when a big curse is going to start. And there's an emergence of that curse taking place because of people doing the wrong thing. Now, with all these people, with scholars, with Ph.D s, with people that are learned, philosophers, they're saying similar things that I'm saying, but maybe in a different context. Look at where the society is. Check your bias at the door, right or left bias, and just look at what is going on. and your interactions throughout the day, can you honestly say that people in general deserve to live? The answer is no. But honestly, look at the situation. So if you are an entity like God, all right, or above an entity like God, all right, or you are Satan, and you have the ability to take one's life, all right, and there's some sort of judgment that's going to be placed on people. Can you honestly say that people don't deserve it? Look at what's happening. Look at the window into social media and how people are so hateful. And everyone's so worried, everyone's so focused on Epstein files. Yet there's a big recession that's possibly going to be coming that may eclipse Lehman. Can you honestly say that people don't deserve the curse? Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, Steve Bannon, AOC, Chuck Schumer, the Squad, all of these crazy left-wing liberals, everyone, even the middle of the country, is going to get cursed because we didn't do the right thing. We'll let this crazy train happen. So that's at the layman level. Now the scholars, the religious scholars, they're not doing what they're supposed to do. Where's the ritual slaughtering of the Paraduma? So if that's not taking place, don't you think that the Godhead is going to come down and say, you didn't believe in what was written down. You didn't take heed to the warnings of what was going on. And now there's going to be a curse because the Paraduma was not ritually slaughtered. So in essence, there is a component of the crazy train that is the cause of the religious community with the Jews. Because they didn't do what they were supposed to do. Why? I'm not sure. I suspect they were scared. Because when they do that, it's going to set in motion things that are radically going to change the world.
So Trump got hoodwinked. He took out Iran for them, and then they didn't send any help. At least Israel, you could say, well, exactly. He got hoodwinked by Israel, but they sent 300 planes over there. And they did a lot of the damage, if not most of the damage to the command and control and the intelligence. So it's not based on empiricism. It's just a frustration that a lot of people on the influencer side, they look at clicks and they say, where is public opinion now, and how do I get a week ahead of it?
Yep, and that's totally how they do it. That is totally how they do it. It's all about marketing. It's not about what they're saying. It's all about, and they're not even trying to help people. It's all about themselves. I have never decided what to say because of the trend. Ever. In my whole life. I don't believe in following the trend. Actually, I'm almost the opposite. I think going against the trend is better. Now, maybe, that's more of a trading perspective, because, if you think about Warren Buffett, how he trades in a way where he's going opposite of the market. You buy low, sell high, not buy high and sell low. All right? So a contrarian in a way. So, sometimes following trends, it's like it just makes you just a carbon copy of something. But that's exactly what these podcasters do. It's all about the clicks. It's not about really having good information or new information. And so what does the religious community warn the seculars? They say, stay away from Lashon Hara, meaning talking bad about people, because it can cause problems with your soul and cause animosity within the society, and it can get out of control. Our society in general, and everyone, even the religious, have caused Lashon Hara, has spoke Lashon Hara, all right, to some degree. Some people more than others, like Alex Jones, right? So, but the point here is that, and even Trump, he speaks Lashon Hara too. But the thing is that if society can just step back and stop it. Now, what I'm saying is utopic, but if they could stop it, the world would be a better place. And these podcasters, like Tucker, like Candace Owens, are accelerating the Lashon Hara. So you have the layman causing more Lashon Hara. You have the religious scholars not willing to do something that's supposed to happen, the paraduma. And that is intersecting. That's colliding. And there's going to be a curse that starts on 9/11/2026. Unless mankind, as we approach that date, repents. But if it passes that date, there's going to be harm that takes place. Now, how it manifests, no one knows. But there's going to be problems. So, you really want to blame the Jews? You really want to blame Netanyahu? You really want to focus on Epstein? Because there's bigger things that are happening, way bigger, that will affect your life directly. The paraduma is far more important than Epstein. The paraduma is far more than anything in your life. Because if that happens, right, the world changes. But if it doesn't happen, there will be a curse that forces the change. You can do it easy, or you can have it forceful. And something very similar that's happening, because everything happens in a fib sequence, it rhymes. What's happening in Iran? How is America projecting itself on Iran? You can do it easy by giving up your nuclear weapons, and we can de-escalate, and you get integrated in the world economy again, or we're going to blow you up. And there's going to be there's going to be chaos. But either way, the nuclear weapon capability is going to be gone. Now, nuclear is very similar in terms of energy to the paraduma, the red heifer. Why do I say that? It has the ability to set in motion the purity of the vessels. And the vessels, when the temple is built, will lead to a Kav energy source that comes down in the Holy of Holies. And that energy force is going to bless the world. All right? But to get there, to get to that point, to allow for the Kav energy to flow, the paraduma has to happen. So the paraduma is similar to this nuclear issue with Iran. But this nuclear issue is about destruction. This is the reason why Esau could not get the blessing. Because if he had the blessing, he would have literally destroyed the world. While Jacob was a shepherd, he could cultivate that energy, that Kav force. So if the scholars aren't willing to ritually slaughter the paraduma, and Iran is not willing to give up their nuclear weapons, the world is going to be forced to do the right thing. and to allow for the paraduma to take place. They're connected. These things are connected because of the soul roots are connected between Jacob and Esau. They're twins. So the paraduma and the nuclear weapons are connected. The nuclear weapons have to be taken away from and destroyed or diluted. But the nuclear material has to be taken from Esau, and the paraduma has to be ritually slaughtered. Both of those conditions have to be met, or something bad is going to happen.
People because of the Hamas propaganda, and the more damage Israel does to Beirut, and this war didn't end in a week. It's not like the bombing last summer, 4 or 5 weeks, and people are getting restless. And I've got to get ahead of what people are and be outrageous, and they are. And
Victor,
they're
can
getting a
you,
lot.
if I ask you just in general, is there any difference at this point between the Tucker wing of, I guess, what you would call the right and the Mamdani wing of the left on foreign policy? I cannot discern any real difference on foreign policy.
On foreign policy, well, if you take Tucker,
Exactly.
He despises Israel. Mamdani despises Israel. They feel that Islamic civilization.
Well, Mamdani is more siding with Islam. Tucker's more siding with Christian nationalism. That's the difference.
The West is in decline, and I mean, Tucker said that he thought that Western cities were not as successful as Islamic cities. He's, as somebody who's been in Damascus and Old Cairo and Tripoli and Algiers, I can tell you that that's even at our nadir here in the United States, that's not true. But and then on Ukraine, I think they're pretty much pro-Russian. So I can't see a lot of difference. They're very critical of the United States. So
this is the reason why I was saying the country component of Tucker is that pillar is starting to crack. It's brittle. It's fragile with Tucker. He's an America First pacifist. He wants to align with Shia Islam, maybe not directly, and demonize Israel. Israel is not lily white. I'm telling you that right now. They're not lily white. But out of this crazy train, there's something that is supposed to happen with that paraduma. But Tucker knows better because he knew how to tie a bow tie when he was on CNN.
Can see is that they have this. Yes. They say they're Christian monarchists. You know that they're, and Mamdani is an Islamic chauvinist. So that's the only difference that I can see. Yes. But it's very.
This is actually a really smart upgrade for your laptop setup. It is a laptop stand and an 11-in-1 docking station and one 4K HDMI for easy screen.
It's very bizarre because I hadn't seen this on the right at all, and the left. The other thing that people don't understand, I think here, but maybe in Israel too, that in the United States, all of the cultural institutions and levels of power and influence, the New York Times, the Chicago Tribune, LA Times, Washington Post, NPR, PBS, professional sports, Hollywood entertainment, Jimmy Kimmel, Robert De Niro, you name it, the deep state, the bureaucracies who hate Trump that run the state, a lot of the governorships, a popular culture that makes it cool to spit in the face of ICE or say Israel is hit. All of that makes enormous pressure on people that are in journalism or public communications. And so they have discovered that the moment Tucker made this turn and Meghan went this turn and they are beloved now by the left. They always have a little qualifier to say, well, he may be a fascist, but Tucker's onto something. Or Steve Bannon gave a brilliant exegesis. Or Megyn, it's finally good to see Megyn Kelly talk sense. And that's a powerful narcotic because they have a lot more, I don't think they have more political power or financial power, but they have a lot more cultural power. So kids in high school or kids in college or people in the street, they're going to hear that message more and it's going to be cool. And the entertainment industry, so at the Grammys or the Oscars or the Tonys, somebody is going to get up there and blast Israel or blast Trump. And that puts a lot of pressure on people. I think that they found that would be, I don't think they were surprised,
Yes,
but
Victor,
they're
we
very
have 1
well
minute
liked
left
now.
with you, and I want to ask you what lastly, I just saw a poll, 60% of Americans, a majority of both political parties, say they have negative views of Israel. So before you go, is this something that you think is something that will pass once the war stops and things go back to normal? Or do you think that this is the new norm? Israel is now going to be not only a partisan issue that Democrats pretty much totally hate Israel, but also on the right, we're going to just continue down this path where Israel is sort of a pariah and less politicians would be willing to support it publicly? Or should we not take it too seriously? How do you look at that?
I think it'll mitigate. People do have ideological and political views, but it also depends on success. And when it's all over, if Iran is humble and the Gulf and Russia's out of the Middle East and China is at the mercy of a secular Iran, maybe that could happen in a year or two, who knows? And there is a nexus between the Gulf monarchies and Israel, I think you'll see a big difference. But one of the things that's happening when you say that they're very anti-Israel, I think the Republican Party is pretty much pro-Israel, 65%. But the left has made this argument that, and I think your left is responding to it, that if there was a different government in there, they say that some people in the left say, well, Netanyahu's not Israel, he's a fascist. And I think people in Israel, as you know, are very anti-war on the left. And a lot of them are advertising to Westerners, if we get in power, we're going to reach out to Europe and the United States and repudiate what Netanyahu's done. I mean, rhetorically, not in fact, because actually secretly they're happy what he's done. But that's a big thing. And then there's another element involved, and that's the DEI movement that Trump's trying to war on, diversity, equity, inclusion. And it basically says that 70% of the country who is white are oppressors and victimizers. And then Obama created this, and he said it's not just blacks that are only 10, 11%. We've got a huge constituency of Hispanics and Asians, even rich Indians from India, anybody. No class distinction. You can be a millionaire and you can be a victim. And we have legitimate claims against people who are white. And in that binary, the Palestinians, so we have this Orwellian situation, surreal, that I would see at Stanford, the kids from Kuwait and Saudi Arabia who were decked out in gold and designer clothes demonstrating. And then you see some Jewish guy with jeans and a t-shirt, maybe 4 guys versus 500. And everybody was angry at the Jewish guys. And because there's no class, they're no longer class oppressors. Yes. And by the way, they were whiter than the Jewish guy. So that's happening. And in that binary, 2 things happen. Israel and Jews are made to be part of the white exploitative. And more importantly,
yes,
they bring in the settler colonial thing. So they are European colonists. They don't know anything about the history of the Middle East or the long Jewish 3 millennium. So I don't know. I think it will peak, but it will depend on how well the Middle East looks after this, and what if the best thing that could happen to the United States and Israel is if these Gulf monarchies are sincere and they see how Iran can destroy them, and they see how Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis use them, and they finally say, I'm not going to subsidize these Iranian proxies when the master is trying to destroy us. And if they were to cut off the Arab terrorist proxies, even if they were to diminish it and reach out to the West and to Israel, then that would take away a lot of the criticism, because then people, it wouldn't be Islam or it wouldn't be Arabs, it would just be the radicals versus the sane people in the Middle East, and Israel be one of the same. So, but I'm sorry I can't offer more in-depth analysis, because someone who has been, here 6 generations, and I have never seen the open anti-Israel, anti-Semitic. I saw a little bit. You see, part of the problem is Israel's no longer the 67 underdog. And you tell people they only have 11 million people. Oh, no, that's not true. They don't. And if you say Israel's got a bigger air force than any single NATO nation, Germany, England. Your air force is twice the size of the French, more than that of the German, and twice the size of the British. You have a bigger navy than the United Kingdom. So you're a powerhouse, and so they feel that you're an overdog imperialist.
By the way, Victor, I agree. I just want to give you one funny story that I saw. Joe Rogan had. You probably saw it.
Before he tells his funny story, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the ashwagandha root. Ashwagandha root will control your cortisol levels, help you to control your blood glucose levels. And when you do that, you're boosting up your immune system and you're controlling your cardiovascular health. Lignans soaks up free radicals, brings down inflammation, helps with the immune system, boosts up your endocrine system. And it helps the cardiovascular system. And oh, by the way, when you have better blood flow to your brain, it helps your brain. When you're bringing down inflammation in the brain, guess what? It reduces plaque formation. Really important. Because you don't want to build up amyloidosis. You want to build up those plaques and cause that amyloidosis. It's really bad for you. So it's important to keep taking supplements that bring down that inflammation. And you get added benefits. It's helping your immune system too. You stack it together to get the max benefit. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the lignans, the ashwagandha root, stack them together. And better yet, if you also stack it with the turmeric that's on my store, you'll get further benefits. Now, go to my store and get the structural nano silver soaps. You can get it in peppermint and also lemongrass. Get a couple bars for your household. It improves your skin and the pores of your skin. Use it every day, but it will also help to neutralize because it has structural nanosilver. And Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost has 68 nutrients that will help to build muscle, help with brain function, help with your cardiovascular health, help boost up your immune system and your endocrine system, rev up your metabolism, and you'll have more energy. Take Boomer Boost. It's going to help slow down the aging process. But not just that, your system will improve and you'll have more vitality. And you can stack this with many of the supplements that I have, like C60 and the Max 35 and the turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans. Those are great stacks to help slow down the aging process. Stack it with the multivitamins. Stack it with the probiotics. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And lastly, super strong relief. If you have a muscle ache, a sprain, a headache, or even arthritis, rub this on your skin. It will relieve the pain within 90 seconds. Please go to my store, get the super strong relief.
Oh, and God said to Joe Rogan, how many Jews do you think there are in the world? And he said 1 billion. And then he said, yeah. And then he said, you know what? I'm going to rephrase 900 million. And then he said, no, there's like 18 million in the whole world. I said, you must be kidding. I can't believe this. He was in shock. And I said, no, let's go to Wikipedia and check on the show. And they checked, and it was really like 18 or 17 million, whatever it is now. And he was totally in shock And I think if Joe Rogan is like that with his, he's not like some guy that's in a cave. You can imagine, just to underscore what you said, it's like if someone is strong, if a group is seen as strong, they must have everything and they must be all these things that you said. So
Yeah, Tucker is that way too. He said, as you recall, that Bethlehem had been denuded of Christians and they had been forced out, unlike places in the Gulf where Christianity. And when people tried to explain or write, and I wrote something about it, that in Israel, Arabs can be in the parliament, they vote, they're free to have their own religious worship, they have their own mosque, but in places like Oman, Kuwait, Emirates, Christians are in enclaves and they have to have permission to get a permit and they cannot build a church outside. There is no freedom of religion or expression. But he seems to think that because wealthy Christians live in the Gulf, and there are more of them in the Gulf, not that much more, by the way, than in Israel, it's because Israel drove everybody out of Bethlehem and then they had to flee to the protection of another Arab country. And it's just, so when you see that contortion and those gymnastics, there has to be a cause. And the cause is there is no difference anymore in the West between anti-Israelism and anti-Semitism. I think a lot of people in Israel still cling to that belief, our hope. And I will sorely disappoint them, but I would suggest to them the people that I know that hate Israel hate Jews, and the people who hate Jews hate Israel. And I don't know too many people who love Jews and hate Israel, or love Israel, hate Jews, or love Jews and hate Israel. They become synonymous. And that old canard, I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm just mad at the Netanyahu government. I don't think it's persuasive. Not what they say. And it's pretty.
Victor Davis Hanson, I took more time than I promised you. And I know that you are recuperating, so I just want to wish from the bottom of my heart, please take care of yourself. Please feel better. And when you do, and you want to come to Israel, we invite you as always. Now the flights hopefully will open back up. So feel better and
All right. We're going to go to CNN. We're going to go to CNN talking about the U.S. Navy blockade. This is the take of Dr. Fareed Zakaria. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. This will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals. And it's dual purpose. It's a month's supply. Take it every day. You'll even recover quicker after a workout because you're soaking up those free radicals and bringing down inflammation. But you're also helping your immune system, your endocrine system, your cardiovascular system. You know the story. I mean, I've been telling it 1,000 times. But a lot of people don't realize it, how important it is to detoxify your body regularly, bring down inflammation, and soak up those free radicals because you will slow down the aging process and help all these different organ systems. And when you help all these different organ systems, you're also helping your brain function. It's really important because a lot of people are going to get stupid in the next 5 years because of the crisis that we went through. Early onset of dementia will increase 100%. It will increase. There's no doubt. No doubt. I'm 100% confident of that. Early onset of dementia will increase because of the crisis we went through. So people better start paying attention. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and bring down that inflammation, soak up those free radicals, improve your neural connections. It's a holistic approach. Proper diet, proper exercise, proper sleep, learn new things, balancing exercises, stretching, resistance training, cardio. You want more resistance training than cardio. Building muscle is really important. Please go to my store and get the heirloom barley. Olive leaf extract, dual purpose, helps with your immune system and cardiovascular system, brings down inflammation, and helps your lipid profile. You're starting to catch the theme here. All right. Digestive enzyme complex helps to break up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. Reduces the load on your pancreas. Helps the health of your pancreas. And you'll be able to absorb your nutrients better. Omega-3 helps with cardiovascular health, brings down inflammation, and helps you control your lipid profile. And vitamin B complex. Vitamin B complex helps with the mitochondria. The first 4 B vitamins helps boost up the ATP in your cell. Your cellular metabolism will improve, and you can protect your neurons with vitamin B complex. And probiotics. Improve your gut biome with taking the veggie cap version or the powdered version that I have on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And by taking a good probiotic, you're improving your skin. You're also improving your sleep pattern. Your brain function will improve with good gut biome. You'll be able to absorb your nutrients. You'll reduce the chances of getting allergies because leaky gut, because of a poor gut biome, can increase your chances to getting allergies. Because what happens is that food particles, the proteins that are in the food, will get into your bloodstream improperly, and your body thinks it's foreign and will start to create antibodies against it, and that's how you get a food allergy. It's not the only way, but it's a main mechanism. All right. So if you have a better gut biome with better mucosal layer, better immune system, you don't have that problem. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotics. Make sure you use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. Click the link in the description, go to my store, and get healthy. It's that simple.
For sure. Quote, effective immediately, the United States Navy, the finest in the world, will begin the process of blockading any and all ships trying to enter or leave the Strait of Hormuz. Additionally, and at an appropriate moment, we are fully locked and loaded, and our military will finish up the little that is left of Iran. Let us try to understand how a blockade would work. I'm joined by Admiral James Stavridis, former NATO Supreme Commander. Jim, how you've traversed these straits dozens, maybe hundreds of times. Tell us how a blockade would work and how much American naval power would be required to make it work.
Well, I certainly agree with one thing the president said was the United States Navy is the finest in the world. I'll take that. But this is not trivial work. Any blockade is difficult because it's an open seaway. Historically, we are enormous supporters of freedom of navigation. So when you conduct a blockade, it is an act of war, and it is something that has grave consequence in terms of how you execute it. As to how many ships you would need, I'd say if I were the admiral in command and Admiral Brad Cooper is the CENTCOM commander, he will probably want to put 2 aircraft carrier strike groups. So that's 2 carriers. So he has plenty of air cover up above him. And then he'll want about a dozen destroyers and frigates. All of this would be arrayed in the southern part of the Gulf. All the way down outside the Gulf would be the U.S. forces. And then inside the Gulf, Fareed, you've got probably half a dozen American warships, and you'd want to bring in the Emirati Navy, the Saudi Navy. So you try and bottle it up on both sides. Bottom line, this is a big task, and it's a big gamble. So final thought here, what's the play? Why are we doing this? I think is going to be the question on most people's minds. And it's an economic squeeze. So if you think of this on a scale that runs from doing nothing, walking away from the table, ceasing hostilities, that runs to destroying the civilization of Iran, an economic blockade like this is right in the middle. It puts economic pressure on Tehran without destroying the oil facilities, which you'd want to preserve into the future. So big, complicated undertaking, hardly a trivial move on the chessboard we've been watching.
And so far, Jim, Iran has found asymmetrical ways, often quite cheap, to to maintain its control of the strait by essentially just spooking insurance companies enough that there is no traffic. Is there an asymmetry? Is there something the Iranians can do? What do you imagine would be their kind of countermeasure?
Let's do it from the inside out. So let's look at the strait itself. The asymmetric play there would be smuggling. It would be trying to run the blockade. Think what the Confederate South did in the United States when Abraham Lincoln put an enormous blockade around the entire southern states. It's pretty porous, and so they can certainly try smuggling. That'll be very difficult. Secondly, they could put more mines in the water. Fortunately, CENTCOM has destroyed, according to reports, 90+% of the 5,000 pre-war mines, but Iran could put a lot more mines into the water, and they could come off small boats or dhows, which are the ubiquitous indigenous craft of the Gulf. Moving out from the Gulf itself, I would start to really worry about cyber. And what I mean by that is, here's China, an expert cyber nation, alongside Russia, another expert cyber nation. Here's a way that they could assist Iran by using cyber. And all of this, Fareed, as you've reported on over the last couple of months, comes at a time when AI is making cyber tools much more accessible and available. So this emerging strain of cyber threat is one stream, and then aid from Russia and China is another stream of threat. It's like in Ghostbusters. You don't want those streams to cross. So there are three things they can think about.
I want to bring in now the president's first-term UN ambassador, Nikki Haley, who advised the president on Iran.
God, I think
among
she's
many other
such a
things in that role. She's currently the
piece of
Walter
shit.
Stern Chair at the Hudson Institute. Ambassador, thank you so much for being here. I, of course, want to start with what we just heard from the president, that he is going to start a blockade, that any and all ships trying to enter or leave the Strait of Hormuz. What do you make of that? Is that the right move?
Good morning, Dana. Well, first, I think you look at where they were going into the negotiations. The U.S. had a 15-point plan. Iran had a 10-point plan. They really were miles apart. The Iranians were not willing to give up their nuclear production. They weren't willing to give up holding the Strait of Hormuz hostage. And I think Vice President Vance did the right thing by walking away and saying, we're not going to continue talks. This isn't worth our time, and we'll finish the mission. And I think what you're seeing President Trump do is not pause at all and say, we're going to go after Iran where it hurts. I think if you look over the span of this war, CENTCOM has done a remarkable job by taking out the majority of their missile, drone, naval capabilities, which really was at the heart of the strategy of what Iran wanted to do. But the part to really bring Iran to its knees is to go after it economically. And, I think making sure that the strait is open is the first part of that. I think the second part of that's going to be really important. It's finally dealing with Russia and China. You look at Russia, and it was their intelligence that was used to hit our bases, in Turkey and Qatar, the oil fields in Saudi Arabia. They gave the intelligence to Iran. Iran shot those. And China, hundreds of ballistic missiles have been made because China has supplied them. And now we know that China is getting ready to give man pads, which is going to only give them more air defense systems to work with. So, look, I think Trump wasted no time. I think he's moving forward, and I think he's calling Iran's bluff.
Whether it's a blockade or some other military operation, would you support that to reopen the strait?
But I don't understand how blockading the strait is going to somehow push the Iranians into opening it. I don't get the connection there. I agree. Right. I think actually Ambassador Haley underestimated.
Right, we're going to go to BBC. We're going to go to BBC, and they're talking about the U.S.-Iran talks fail, and get a perspective from the BBC. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the blueberry, the cherry flavor, or the honey and lemon structural nail silver drops. You have a throat irritation, take them right away. I also have lozenges that are larger than the drops. Manuka honey, and also in Orange Splash. Get the lozenges and the drops, have some at work, have some at home. It will help to mitigate any problems that you may have with the allergy season, the cold season. And they help to neutralize. Not only just create secretion to protect your oral pharynx, but it helps to neutralize. These are the best drops and lozenges that you can get. Why? Because they have structural nanosilver in it. So please go to my store, get the drops and the lozenges, and be prepared. The-studio-reykjavik.com. And oh, by the way, if you love this show, please donate. You can donate through Strait, PayPal, or buy me a coffee instead of helping Tucker Carlson, the blue blood that was born with a bow tie.
Nick, that will be on newscast today, won't it?
Hi, Vic.
And things have unravelled. And just yesterday, we were talking to newscasters about the significance of the US and Iran being in the same room together. And of course, we listed the stumbling blocks, didn't we?
Yeah, and I mean, that clearly was a big deal. It was 21 hours of talks, but let us not forget, Vic, the United States and Iran have not spoken at this level since the Islamic Revolution in Iran in 1979. So right now, the stumbling blocks were clearly just too big.
We've been at it now for 21 hours, and we've had a number of substantive discussions with the Iranians. That's the good news. The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement, and I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America. So we go back to the United States having not come to an agreement. We've made very clear what our red lines are, what things we're willing to accommodate them on, and what things we're not willing to accommodate them on. And we've made that as clear as we possibly could, and they have chosen not to accept our terms.
So obviously the Iranian version is that the US demands, they say, were excessive. We'll be unpacking those. We'll go through those in some detail in a bit. And they're saying that the atmosphere of these talks was mistrust, suspicion, and doubt. So over right now.
And we'll try and work out what happens next on this episode of Newscast. Hello, it's Victoria in the studio.
And it's Nick in the studio.
And it's Joe Pipe also in the studio.
And we are recording at 5 to 11 on Sunday morning. And forgive me if this sounds completely naive. I had no idea that apparently they were trying to sort this in less than 24 hours. I honestly, I thought we were talking weeks. And now it's all over. And JD Vance is back in the States.
Yes, I mean, it took 18 months, didn't it, to get the deal over the Iranian nuclear program under the Obama presidency. 18 months. Donald Trump doesn't like doing something in 18 months. I mean, he would have 18 hours. It's quite long.
We'll be gone in just over 18 months, what, 2.5 years?
Yeah, that's
it. So he wants to get a move on. I thought, I mean, on your show, we'll be hearing it from a bit. We heard from Wes Streeting, who's obviously the Health and Social Care Secretary. He said that these talks are over. And he said the two most important words on your show, they're over for now.
Yeah.
For now. And I mean, if you want, Vic, we can sort of look at where the difficulties are now and then sort of put that into some sort of context. So the Iranians are saying that there were three sort of stumbling blocks. Firstly, the demand of the United States that the Strait of Hormuz, that's of course where 20% of the world's oil supply normally goes through, but that's open and not closed again by Iran. The second thing was the fate of this 900 pounds of enriched uranium. And let's not forget, this is enriched to nearly weapons grade. And the third thing was demand from Iran that $27 billion of Iranian assets frozen abroad, that they should be released. Now, what JD Vance said is we, the United States, need an affirmative commitment from Iran that they will not seek a nuclear weapon or the tools to acquire them. So that is all looking on paper really, really difficult. But I wonder whether actually at this point you sort of, take yourself up to the height of a bird and you look down and you ask two big questions. Number one, does Donald Trump want the Strait of Hormuz to be closed? No. Does Iran want to be continually bombed by the United States and Israel? Well, Iran clearly has a much higher pain threshold, but they will be worried if the United States were to move in on Carg Island and not just tack military installations, but oil installations, because 90% of Iranian oil exports go from that island. You think of those two big questions, and that fundamentally means they probably don't want this to go on. So I wonder whether we'll be back at the table at some point.
Interesting. I mean, I agree with all of what Nick said, Vic. I don't think the US failure in 20 or so hours is a massive shock. It does seemingly reflect the weakness of Donald Trump's hand and the contrast between what Nick is talking about now and the bullishness of that pre-recorded video announcement on the morning of the initial strikes on Donald Trump. I mean, it is a huge contrast, especially as Donald Trump was basically saying to the Iranian people, some of them, rise up, this is your one chance. It has clearly not gone to plan, and the two options seem to be continue negotiations, which I'm sure will happen, but not immediately, or is there going to be some form of escalation? And that doesn't seem to be in Donald Trump's interest domestically.
No.
For now, but
no. And then overnight, Donald Trump has said, "Look, what sort of bullish and casual in a way. Whatever happens, we won. Doesn't matter what happens, we won." Okay, but the Strait is still not open, and you said you sent 2 Navy vessels through it yesterday to test it. Iran says no, you didn't. We're no further forward. And what happens to the ceasefire?
But you know what, Vic? I think you put your finger on the absolutely key moment here, and it's picking up on a very significant thing that Joe said, which is talking
First
about
of
how
all,
weak
first of all, there is a podcast, this Day in Shipping, I think is the name of the podcast, and he goes into detail what's going over the Strait. And he confirmed that there were 2 ships, Navy ships, that went through the Strait. All right. Now, how did he confirm it? The first one went in with their beaker system turned off. All right. It was turned on in the Gulf of Omar, and then it ended up through the Strait of Hormuz, and then the beacon signal turned on, and it's now in the Persian Gulf. So obviously the first one worked, and the second one, to my understanding, was that beaker system was on the whole way through. Okay, so there's 2 ships there. Iran is saying no. Well, why is the tracking system saying yes? Now, maybe there's some sort of misinformation that's taking place, or disinformation that's taking place. Who knows? But in addition, this is buying time for Trump to reload the bays for the Tomahawk missiles on the destroyers and the frigates. That's really important, because you can't reload them when they're at sea. They have to go into port. And this is the reason why Iran was shooting missiles at that island in the Indian Ocean. Because the Lincoln had to reload. So a lot of people aren't paying attention that it takes a little bit of time to get to port, load up the Tomahawks, and then to get back to the Gulf, the Persian Gulf. So Trump is buying time. That's what's happening.
Donald Trump looks at the moment. And you were saying that there was Donald Trump in Miami last night with Marco Rubio at the Ultimate Fighting Championship in Miami. And he was, as you say, Vic, very bullish language. He was saying things bullish, but also not just bullish, nonchalance. We win regardless. We've destroyed them militarily. And you slightly sense with Donald Trump, and indeed the language from J.D. Vance in Islamabad is there some play acting going on there? Are they wanting to show we've won? Do we care whether they come to the table? And that actually that is a cover as Donald Trump seeks to deal with what Joe was saying is the appearance of weakness. he wants to look strong, but actually there will be some sort of diplomatic process going on underneath all of that.
One of the really interesting assessments I thought on BBC this morning was Sir Alex Younger, former head of MI6, talking to you, Vic, on BBC One, who said the world is more dangerous as a result of the war in Iran, which is open-ended without a clear end game. He said the risk for the UK is we look like our arms are folded and we're waiting for the Americans to fail. We need to position ourselves as helpful without crossing the line of Keir Starmer's already set out, and we need to be emotionally intelligent in our interactions. Because the UK is in this awkward position. Yes, Yvette Cooper has had these meetings with 40 plus of her fellow foreign ministers from different countries. Yes, there are going to be officials, top senior foreign office officials from those countries meeting next week, and UK thinks it has some diplomatic role, but contrast to the US and Iran's role, it sort of seems pretty insignificant.
I have to say, but I thought that Alex Younger said something really interesting on your program.
He always does. He's unreal, that man, in terms of his insight.
So Alex Younger used to be the head of MI6, the Secret Intelligence Service, and if you're a Bond fan, that's M. Now, the head of MI6...
You must be a Bond fan.
Well, may have been occasionally. The head of MI6 wouldn't usually spend a lot of time talking to the President of the United States. And on your show, Alex Younger said, yeah, I know Donald Trump quite well.
I know Donald Trump reasonably well. He's not an ideological character. He does what Donald Trump wants to do. And in this case, he's, as often happens to US presidents towards the end of their time, they become more traditional. And he's become a more traditional president in a really idiosyncratic, slightly weird way, intervening in the Middle East, hanging out with Israel, doing wars. It's quite a traditional playbook.
Let's talk a little bit about southern Lebanon, because Israel has continued its attacks on southern Lebanon. So obviously there's no ceasefire there. That's clear. They were due to hold their own talks in Washington next week. That is, a representative for the Israeli government and a representative for the Lebanese government. Is the Lebanese Deputy Prime Minister, Dr. Tariq Mitri.
I'm not using the word conditional, but I think for those meetings to be meaningful, we've got to see some sort of cessation of hostilities, no matter if provisional. How could you engage in meaningful discussions, preparing true negotiations to talk about all issues? How can you do that while tens and hundreds of people are being killed or injured? You've got to put a stop to this, to put this on hold, to be able to have a constructive conversation. But we are going on Tuesday to the meeting that will be held at the State Department.
Now, I should say I recorded that interview with the Lebanese Deputy Prime Minister yesterday, so I don't know if those talks on Tuesday will still go ahead now that the big talks in Islamabad have broken down. Just to say, Israel has said its operations in southern Lebanon and actually across Lebanon are aimed at weakening Hezbollah and achieving what they call their military objectives. Lebanese officials say during the whole of this conflict, more than 1,700 people have been killed. This is the UK government's view on the peace talks breaking down overnight. The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, was talking for the government on BBC One earlier.
Well, it's obviously disappointing that the talks have broken down for now, but the optimist in me says two things. Firstly, the mere fact that the US and the Iranians were willing to get around the table together is highly unusual and necessary. It's the only way we're going to end this war. Secondly, the nature of diplomacy is that every day ends in failure until you achieve success. So I don't think we should be too surprised.
But what are you expecting now then? What is next?
We want to make sure that
more
our holds. We want to make sure that we see a negotiated end to this, and one that puts Iran's nuclear ambitions to bed. Because we've made a conscious decision as a country. The Prime Minister has been very clear this was not our war. We didn't choose war in Iran. And Keir Starmer made a choice that I think most British prime ministers alive today would not have made.
Can we just try and nail what the possibilities are of what might happen next?
Well, one thing we do know, Vic, is that Wes Streeting is the best communicator in this government. And he was working incredibly hard in that interview to make sure he did not create any headlines on Iran, because the UK is not a major player here. So what's the UK going to do? Well, clearly Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Secretary, is going to continue with those, 40 strong talks with other countries, so that there may be a process to help keep the Strait of Hormuz open. But that doesn't mean sending warships there tomorrow. It means in the event of a peace deal, there could be some sort of process on hand. The next challenge Keir Starmer faces is saying yes or no to allowing American bombers to take off from UK bases, as he makes very clear that can only be in the context of collective self-defense. And interestingly, last week, the Prime Minister was saying, we're monitoring what those bombers do, because there is a red line for us. The UK will not allow those bases to be used for offensive operations. But on the big picture of what do we do where this bigger process goes, well, we watch. The UK watches.
Right. But in terms of the big picture, the possibilities are the ceasefire holds, the talks in Washington, D.C. between Lebanon and Israel go ahead. Donald Trump escalates the war again, perhaps goes back to the threat he made on Truth Social last week, and the war starts up again. What have I missed? What else could happen?
Well, one reasonably senior person in Whitehall told me in the last 48 hours or so that one of the key things they do every evening is sit and look at the Truth Social post of Donald Trump, sort of that account, and wait to see what is happening next.
Wow.
That is a key part of the sort of
the diplomacy in inverted commas.
Yeah, the daily schedule of people in government circles, in diplomatic circles. Of course, it is. There is this slightly bizarre way that announcements are made unexpectedly. The other thing I think is worth saying is that the focus on Iran is really helpful for Keir Starmer and his government. One, ahead of the local elections, they think this is an issue that they are comparatively strong on, even though opposition parties say, well, they don't necessarily agree with the initial Starmer decisions, but also think the UK military hasn't responded quickly, wasn't that prepared. The UK government think they're in a good situation, therefore they'd far rather Keir Starmer was having meetings about this or touring the Gulf around Iran rather than community events. And of course, he's not really welcome in Scotland and probably not that welcome in Wales either. The second thing is there are other people in government who think that if there was to be a threat to his leadership after the May elections, the more you focus on Iran, the more it's in the headlines, the more he's looking like a world leader responding to events, the safer he is, because how navel-gazing, how self-indulgent they argue would it be if we were talking about replacing him with somebody while these really serious, scary events are underway. That's why I think it's likely that the Temple will try and sort of create more visual events to make it onto news bulletins and the papers with Keir Starmer doing stuff, even though critics have been pointing out, like, there's no real news here. We've had all these Cobra meetings, business leader meetings, news conferences, as Nick says, without really much news being created, because the other sort of side of the coin is they do not want to frustrate the Americans, and they're trying to keep that relationship going, even though they've been sort of dodging brickbats and insults from the White House.
So, Joe, I was presenting Newsnight on Friday night, and I can sort of monitor your work activity, and I could see that you were very, very busy with this news that was first broken in the Times, that the Chagos deal has basically been shelved.
It has, yes. And maybe not entirely a coincidence that news was announced before MPs get back from their Easter recess, when opposition parties could call an urgent question. There does seem to be a view within government that they wanted the narrative around this to be about, look, it's unfortunate, this is not what we wanted to happen. We still want that deal to go ahead, but we couldn't do it without US support. What they don't want, I think, to focus on too much is what both the Conservatives and Reform have been saying, which is that, look, we played a part, we've won here, it's our victory, because we've been campaigning domestically. but also there are Conservative politicians like Ian Duncan Smith, the Labour Party leader, Reform leader Nigel Farage, who said to me he's been talking to various people in the White House about this for months who want to claim credit. And I think it's really important to explain why Chagos matters. And the best example is this Iran war, is this conflict. It, of course, was far easier for the US to launch bombing missions from Chagos and from Fairford in Gloucestershire, which is the Americans' base for heavy bombers in Europe, than it would be from Missouri or Louisiana or North Dakota, where they have other RAF bases. This is a hugely strategically important base. That, of course, is why the UK government want this deal with Mauritius, because they think it's the best way to preserve it, to hand it to Mauritius.
Could you just explain? It's the British Indian Ocean Overseas Territory. At the heart of that is this massive base, Diego Garcia, which is currently in UK hands, but used by the United States, hugely strategically significant. The UK government there is legal uncertainty over the sovereignty of this, because Mauritius is saying it's ours. So what the UK proposes is you hand sovereignty to Mauritius, but then the UK leases the Chagos Islands back for 99 years, and the base
at advanced cost
continue functioning. That's basically the
absolutely very well explained, Nick. I think the view in government is that this deal is still sort of in the ether, like maybe it can be brought back at some stage, but it's not going to be, the legislation is not going to be passed this session before prorogation, and it's not going to be in the King's speech in the middle of next month. Therefore, it could be brought back in the next parliamentary session, so the next year or so, but it's not something that is going to be imminent. And of course, the hope of some opposition parties is that it is completely dead, and they have been using this moment to distill their criticism of Keir Starmer. Camille Badenoch saying it's another indictment of a Prime Minister, the Lib Dems saying it's shambolic, Reform saying it's a shabby saga. It clearly has been embarrassing, some would argue.
But Donald Trump did say publicly he thought the deal was okay last year, didn't he?
And of course, that was one of the successes of the initial Oval Office meeting of Keir Starmer. He thought, oh, we've got him on side. And even more recently, the State Department seemed to be more on side. Why did Donald Trump change his mind? UK opposition parties, some of them think their involvement was key. Others think, well, it's sort of revenge for the fact that Keir Starmer refused access to the US Air Force to Fairford in Gloucestershire and to the Chagos to launch these offensive strikes.
I mean, Ben Judah, who until relatively recently was special advisor to David Lammy, and obviously when he was foreign secretary, says that the Joe Biden administration pleaded with the UK to do this deal because they wanted total certainty over the legal status of the Diego Garcia base. And when the Trump administration came in, the view of David Lammy was, we have to have the support of the new administration. And they were absolutely confident that what they described as the US deep state, either military, thought this was the best way of preserving that base. And that was the view of Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State. It was the view of Donald Trump until, as Joe say, the events unfolded.
A lot of the pundits, a lot of the commentators, they keep on saying, well, we need the islands to launch our aircraft. Well, that's true. But it's also a refueling station. It's also to help rearm our destroyers and our frigates. This is so important because you can only have about 100 Tomahawks, roughly, plus or minus, right? Per boat. And once they are launched, you can't rearm. They have to go to port and be reloaded.
He's changed his mind, but of course it's possible, Vic, that the president changes his mind on this again?
100%. This is what the Health Secretary West Streeting said about this.
What we said all the way along, we wouldn't proceed without American support. Taking a step back, both our predecessors and the Conservatives and this government have had one objective in mind, which is how do we secure the Chagos Islands for the long term? Because it's vital to our national security, it's vital for America, and in terms of our collective security, it's essential too.
Okay.
And we want to make sure that it is secure for the long term. The Americans agree with that objective. We'll work through with Washington to iron out some of the difficulties. We will be in the right position. The UK government hasn't changed its position, but we need to take the Americans with us.
Every week there is something to test the UK-US relationship at the moment, isn't there?
The special relationship is currently the especially difficult special relationship.
That's because
what is interesting is that
the reason why that is
Starmer
the reason why is that you have Starmer, that is a dumbass leftist driving the country into the ground, and he's placating to Muslim constituencies in his country. That's the problem.
Which was to say no to taking part in offensive operations in this. I mean, you've got to go back to sort of Ted Heath having a difficult relationship with Richard Nixon. You've got to go back to Harold Wilson saying, no, we're not going to be taking part in the Vietnam War. To see a UK Prime Minister so publicly and consistently saying, no, there have been disagreements, there have been arguments. To do something like that is a big moment. What is interesting, to pick up on what Joe was saying, is that last week we had the local party election broadcast for the Labour Party. Barely a word about councils. It was all about the decision that Keir Starmer's made here, because he thinks this could remake and save his premiership.
Okay, what should newscasters be looking out for next week?
Parliament is back.
It is. I think, I'm not sure this meeting of political directors, top civil servants of the 40.
All right, we're gonna shift gears here to another video. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get structural nail silver toothpaste. Structural nail silver toothpaste will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, help with the health of your gum line, and reduce inflammation. It also neutralizes. Why? Because it's structural nail silver. Super important, especially during the cold season, but you should be using this every day. Every day. It's the best toothpaste you can get, as no fluoride. And collagen. Take this if you need to remodel your joints because of arthritis or because of a sports injury. This will block enzymes that reduce. So you have enzymes that are produced when you have joint issues. Enzymes are produced that actually erode the joint. You want to block those. Those are MMP3 and MMP13. Collagen will block those enzymes. Also, it'll block Ep4, which blocks inflammation. So it's going to bring down that inflammation. Collagen also helps to recruit glucosamine and collagen type 2 to build the collagen, and acan and chondroitin to help to cushion the joint. So this will help to remodel your joint. Now, if you have a problem with your joints, either because of arthritis or because of a sports injury, start taking this right away. All right, don't let it fester, because the longer you let it fester, the longer it'll take to remodel. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the collagen. You can stack this with the collagen that I have also on my store. And get the cleanse or the Max 35. Take a teaspoon a day every day. Swish in your mouth, gargle 20 seconds or so, and then swallow it. This will boost up your immune system and help to neutralize. Now, what will happen is that you're improving your oral cavity and your oral pharynx, maintaining a mucosal barrier and helping the health of your epithelial cells. You're going to be boosting up your innate immune system. This is super important. And if you're not feeling well because of the cold season, take a tablespoon or two a day, swish in your mouth, gargle, and then swallow. Now, I've been doing this protocol with the Max 35 or the cleanse for over 6 years, every day. All right? Teaspoon a day, every day. If you're not feeling well because of the cold season, and you have that scratchy throat, or you have a problem, you need to neutralize and improve that health of that oral pharynx, take a tablespoon or 2 a day. All right? And then go back to your maintenance dose. But I've been doing this protocol for 6 years, every day. All right? So please, go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, let's see what is going on else in the news. No deal, no deal, everything no deal. France 24 here.
I always say the purpose of AI is to amplify human potential. You are the hero of the story.
Oh. No. I found a France 24 clip that's important to play here.
He was Supreme Allied Commander in the Alliance's Warfare Department Command, overseeing transformation from 2012 to 2015. Welcome back to France 24, General. When you first saw the news emerge, as we all did on Truth Social, President Trump threatening this military blockade, despite Tehran's continued threat to target what it calls enemy of the states, what are your initial thoughts about that?
Well, first, we are still in the scope of the ceasefire, which is one point, I would say, a good point. Secondly, as far as the negotiations are concerned, we have a kind of stalemate. We don't know, but the door is still open. Therefore, Donald Trump is really trying to achieve at least one goal, to take the upper hand on the Strait of Hormuz. And this is a tough fight. Obviously, you don't want to resume the full-fledged war as it was before a ceasefire. He's not ready neither to engage in a specific battle for Hormuz. So he's playing his last card, which is the blockade of the full blockade in some way of the Strait of Hormuz, just to raise the stakes. And sadly, regarding China, the South Asia Southeast countries, which really are directly involved and the victims in a certain way of this full blockage. So this is a way to raise perhaps the stakes of the negotiations. So I wouldn't be surprised if we heard in the next 24 hours that the negotiation will resume very soon. Yeah, this is poker game, and Mr. Trump is trying to put the last card on the pack to win the hand.
That is a very fascinating point you raised there, General. It's worth saying, just take us into that a bit more. Because I would imagine, and tell me, there's clearly been a military brief to President Trump to say, okay, maybe this has been war game from the last few days since we knew the US said they were shocked, or at least President Trump said he was surprised that Iran had carried out this de facto blockade. So this therefore would be the US punishing potentially vessels coming through to China, those who've been allowed to move basically by Iran, India too, saying if you don't get to decide essentially who goes through, this is now our blockade.
Well, what is intriguing is the opening he makes about the countries or the ships who will pay the toll to pass the Darren. Because if you write correctly what is put on his media through social, he say those countries or those ships who pay the toll, there will be, I would say, stopped navigating in international water, which means the overall international waters. So this is a very ambitious plan. I don't know if really he would be able, Mr. Trump would be able to achieve that.
But this is nevertheless a big threat that is pushing. It's not, from my perspective, it's not only speaking about the Strait of Hormuz, but much more widely about international water. So let's see how it put that in place, but there will be some demonstration on that. So that will be tough for, as I said, for China, for Southeast Asia to accept. And perhaps Mr. Trump hopes that those countries will react, and certainly China, saying, well, the game is over, and they will pass the run, and that, again, this is a very touchy and very sensible game, poker game that is playing. What is sure in my mind, for the time being, is not ready to go back to the full-fledged war. This is one point.
And as part of that poker game, having these two US minesweepers, these two military vessels in the waters right now, we're told, cleaning out the Strait from mines in the midst of this ceasefire, and yet the poker game here being your assessment on the risk that those vessels are potentially in.
Well, it's difficult to know what they are doing because those vessels are not really minesweepers. So perhaps they are there to start the blockage before Mr. Trump wrote anything about that, and to be on the map, to take a place in the Strait of Hormuz, just telling Iran that they are ready to take control of a part of the Strait of Hormuz. So this is really it's not much more than a game. Nevertheless, this is a war of position so far, and not an open war. We have not heard about anything which could be compared to aggressive action or offensive action so far.
Or a breach of the ceasefire.
Okay, I'm going to go to Fox News. They just released 13 minutes ago a little bit of an update about the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian trolls in Strait of Hormuz spark outrage. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the C60. You can get it in MCT coconut oil, avocado oil, and also extra virgin olive oil. C60 has to be suspended in oil for proper absorption. Take a teaspoon a day, preferably on an empty stomach in the morning, but take it every day, teaspoon a day. This is going to soak up free radicals. It's 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C. One molecule of C60 is 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C. All right, and the health of your tissues and your cells are going to improve. It's going to reduce stress. It's going to soak up those free radicals. You're going to have more energy. Your metabolism will be better. And by soaking up free radicals at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation. Soaking up free radicals in your neurons will help the health of your neuron and your neural network. So please go to my store, get the C60, take a teaspoon a day every day. You'll also notice that your skin will improve and your immune system and endocrine system will improve. It's really important. And you'll have more energy and you'll recover quicker after a workout. So please go to my store and get the C60. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. It is cheaper per ounce to get the higher ounce configuration. And use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the great supplements and stack them the way I'm telling you to slow down the aging process. It works. You'll be able to get a better BMI. You'll have better cardiovascular health. And overall, your other systems will improve. And these systems will also help to improve your brain function. All right, so if you want more details about why that works, listen to the video that I released just recently about how to improve brain function. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, now what we're going to do is play this 3-minute, 4-minute video by Fox News.
Joining us now is a spokesperson for the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Pascal Canfagro. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you.
I want to get your reaction to the talks out of Pakistan, but I also want to bring up this tweet from President Macron right after the talks ended without an agreement. He writes this, that he spoke with Iran's president and emphasized that Iran should restore freedom and security of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz as quickly as possible. France stands ready to contribute in this area. What does that mean exactly? Does that mean that you will help the U.S. sweep mines from the Strait? What does that mean?
It means that we are ready from day one, actually, to take part in a mission of different countries, a European, regional, or extra-regional country, to exert the freedom of navigation once the bombing part of the ceasefire is really.
See, this is the issue that I have with Trump when he made that statement. Oh, we'll just have maybe we'll charge a toll, maybe they'll charge a toll, and it's okay, it's not okay. Trump should have had someone tell him that, guess what? International law, the Strait should not be tolled. All right? Because it opens up the door for other places in the world to do the same thing. And it causes havoc for freedom of navigation, for commerce, and for the military. All right? And we got a lot of problems in Asia with about freedom of navigation around the 9-dash line. So Trump made such a stupid, off-the-cuff remark about that. It was so dumb. So strategically, it was a stupid thing to say. But, this is the problem with Trump. I voted for Trump. I'm glad that he's in office, right? But that doesn't mean that he would be perfect for every era. He's the right man for the job today, just like George Washington was the right man for the job back in his time. But would George Washington be perfect for today? No, absolutely not. But the thing is, Trump sometimes, because he's not intellectual, will say something so damn stupid. All right? But he's got a lot of street smarts, and he is blessed. And believe me, being lucky is better than being good. All right? Being lucky is better than being good, because you can be good at something and not be lucky. Right? And he's the type of person that he's blessed and he's lucky. He has street smarts. But the thing is, he's not an intellectual. And because he says things off the cuff without really thinking about it, he'll say stupid stuff like what he mentioned about, well, maybe the Iranians could have the Strait as long as they keep it open, but they can create a toll and maybe they'll use it for reparations and blah, blah, blah. For reconstruction. Trump was stupid to approve that. Stupid. And now he has to backtrack. Now, he was kind of talking off the cuff with the press. But the thing is that there is some sort of international norms that Trump doesn't seem to obey because he's not educated enough about the international norms. And unfortunately, I don't think people are telling him in his cabinet that are directly interfacing with him enough about, hey, what you just said was pretty stupid. All right? But I still am glad that he's president, but he's not perfect. And what he needs to do is kill the theocratic regime. The theocratic regime cannot be reconstituted. On top of the IRGC has to be eliminated. And there has to be a true representation of the people within the government. Some sort of balance of powers, very similar to our constitutional republic. The IMF, the World Bank, the UN, other countries in the West can work together to help this blossom into a constitutional republic for the seculars. And we eliminate an enemy and prevent them from having a nuclear weapon. And if we are allied with the seculars within Iran and they can have a constitutional republic, guess what? It puts pressure on Russia for a southern war front. Or it also puts pressure on China because they're getting their oil there from Iran. So This is a geopolitical, really important play for us. So just focusing on nuclear weapons, not the right thing to do here. You got to get rid of negative Esau. And the only way to do it is to kill him. You can't negotiate this. The longer you wait, the worse it's going to get.
Strictly defensive as an operation, and that we will be in the possibility to have a kind of military escort of civilian ships for helping them going through the Strait.
Okay, so a military escort, not necessarily, so a military escort, not necessarily helping to sweep up the mines.
Yeah, what we have in mind is defensive. Once the ceasefire is really brokered, and having a military escort of civilian ships with the countries that are involved and interested in that. It's something that we do already in the Red Sea with our European partners, something which is called aspidance.
Okay, so the Wall Street Journal is reporting, sir, that there have been French ships that have paid the toll that Iran is charging to cross the Strait. I want to ask you if you can confirm that for us. And is France willing to allow Iran to charge tolls in the Strait? It's international.
Yeah, it's exactly an international strait, so we are totally against any toll. As for the French ship that you mentioned, I have no more comment to make. It's really for the company to tell you.
Okay, so you're saying it's a matter for a private company, the private ships to take up. It's not a national matter. And then finally, I just want to ask you about Lebanon. That's been a major sticking point in these conversations. Would France be ready to pressure Lebanon to recognize Israel as a state? Would France be willing to do that?
First, the strikes have to stop on Lebanon. Lebanon is heavily destabilized. There is 1 million displaced persons. There is almost 2,000 victims. Second, Iran has to stop terrorizing Israel through Hezbollah, because Hezbollah chose to bring Lebanon into a war which is not Lebanon's war. And three, now Lebanon has to be included in the ceasefire. It's something that we are pushing diplomatically extremely, because this destabilization will only be a reward to Hezbollah in the future. So we are completely in favor of having direct talks between Lebanon and Israel, as the Lebanese government has offered a few weeks ago.
Okay, Pascal Confavro, thank you very much from the French Foreign Ministry for joining us on the Sunday.
So this evening at 10 o'clock Eastern time, I will be doing a show with John Hogue live. So please join. You can ask questions and interact with us about this very subject, Iran, and what John Hogue thinks is going to happen. Now, my, interpretation of what will happen is different than John's, but I think you can learn quite a bit from what he has to say in his perspective. But my take on this is that for us, the world, to succeed, Esau, negative Esau, must die. If not, what's going to happen is that a curse is going to fall on this earth, that a lot of people are going to be harmed, a lot of people are going to feel pain. It's very important to do the right thing down here. But also, it seems to me that the scholars in Israel need to get their act together and sacrifice or do the ritual slaughtering of the Paraduma. They go hand in hand here. And if only one happens, there's a curse coming down. Thank you for listening. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Make sure you use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.